Chapter 186. Is it a monster? It doesn't look like it. Its limbs, torso, and head are clearly in the shape of a human. If it's really a monster that has cultivated for hundreds of years and has a human form, it's too cowardly to die so casually. In front of the officers of the Supreme Court, Ningxu and Huiyemo squatted on the left and right sides of the wolf demon. They rolled up their sleeves and stretched out their hands to touch the bloody thorns that made people tremble in fear. As the two of them fought, they also cracked jokes that gave people goosebumps all over their bodies. I think so too. If it was killed so easily, the threshold of becoming a monster is too low. Ningxu nodded at Huiyemo as she turned over the demon corpse, covered with sharp black wolf fur with him. Ningxu carefully searched the demon corpse that was neither human nor demon. Her expression was serious and she didn't mind the wonderful smell and the beautiful scene at all. She had already made 2 officers vomit. Soon she found the mystery. She lifted a piece of sticky flesh from the back of the monster corpse's neck with her hand wearing a pig's blister glove. From this cut, it should be that someone poured boiling water from the back of the monster corpse. After the skin was scalded, a cut was made from the back of the neck. Then the skin was slowly peeled off and fresh wolf skin was pasted on the bones and flesh without skin. Judging from how the skin and flesh fit together, the other party did it quite seriously and tightly. The places where the wolf skin was joined together, and the places where it didn't fit tightly were even sewn together with a needle and thread, making it impossible for people to see any flaws at first glance. TSK, what a skillful embroidery. Looking at the corpse of the wolf demon that could be said to be perfect, Ningxu was not stingy with her praise. Hearing this, the officers who were vomiting on the wall turned pale and vomited even more violently. Even Tan Siwei's face changed. He was shocked by Ningxu's fierce action. After mocking, Ningxu restrained her expression and said seriously, "Why don't you guess who this dead man is?" Tan Siwei thought for a while. "Feng-san." "Yes." Ningxu pointed at the bump on the wolf demon's forehead. "Everyone look here. Although his skin has been peeled off, the sarcoma on his forehead is still there. According to Lin Yang's description, it matches Feng-san's without a doubt." After saying that, her tone changed and she revealed a thoughtful expression. "But where did his skin go? Could it be?" Her eyes followed her thoughts and slowly moved to the abdomen of the corpse, then stopped. "Don't tell me it's inside?" Opposite him, Huiyemo took a deep breath as if he had a toothache. "That's too miserable. Should we dissect it?" Ningxu nodded. "Cut it open. Even if it's a torn piece of paper, we have to find a way to put the pieces back together, let alone a whole piece of human skin." Huiyemo hesitated. "But it's been dead for about 3 days. Even if it's still there, it's probably rotten." Ningxu, on the other hand, was more open-minded. "Let's just give it a try. As long as we can find a piece or two, it will confirm our guess." "Okay then." Huiyemo began to take out the knife and took a wooden basin to feed the horse water from the manger next to him. He splashed it with water and prepared it for later use. Ningxu helped. Before cutting the knife, she said to Tan Siwei and others, "We will dissect the body here. Please search this room. Maybe you can find a lot of useful things." People in the Supreme Judiciary were relieved. They rushed into Feng-san's room and began to search for suspicious evidence. Ningxu couldn't help laughing. She looked at Huiyemo and the sharp knife flashed with silver light. She cut the rotten meat exposed after the wolf skin was peeled off. "So we already know some details of the case?" In Prince Namping's mansion, Xiaoqing slowly pushed a cup of tea in front of Ningxu. Then he picked up another cup and put it to his lips. Chapter 187. Ningxu silently watched him leisurely sip his tea. She then looked at the wooden basin filled with indescribable things that she had placed not too far away. She thought to herself, "The people from the Supreme Court are secretly saying that I'm a freak. That's because they haven't seen Xiaoqing yet." Even if his sense of smell failed and his eyes couldn't see, he clearly knew that the wooden basin filled with Feng-san's things was right next to him. Not only did he not feel uncomfortable in his heart, he could still elegantly drink his tea. Just this kind of willpower alone was above hers. At the very least, she couldn't eat anything right now. She would have to wait until she calmed down. Quietly pushing the cup of tea and refreshments to the side, Ning-shu said, I think the motive for the crime has already been revealed. If my guess is correct, the head of that vaudeville troupe should have already been decapitated. Not long after, Jussi came in with the information he had just found out. That troupe leader's surnamed Sun had indeed died 6 years ago. The reason for his death was recorded in the records was that he had been bitten to death by a wild beast. His death was also exceptionally tragic. Ning-shu's guess was confirmed. Xia Hoqing put down his teacup and gently tapped his finger on the table a few times. He slowly said, So you're saying that this is a case of revenge spanning many years? Whether it's that troupe leader surnamed Sun, Feng-san, or Qi Zhuanyu, they were all targets of the other party's revenge. Ning-shu took a deep breath. Many images flashed through her mind. There was Feng-san covered in wolf skin, the deranged Qi Zhuanyu, and the little wolf demon who had been dragged to death by a carriage several years ago. For a moment, she didn't know whether to feel more indignant or more sorrowful. She only felt her entire body turn cold, as if she was in the middle of winter. She softly opened her mouth and said, Yes. She took out a booklet that looked like an account book from her sleeve. After opening it, she saw that the handwriting was crooked and full of mistakes. Lin Yang confirmed that it was Feng-san's writing. Several dozen thin pieces of account book were thrown onto the road. Most passers-by would find the words ugly and smelly and refuse to pick them up. However, it recorded an event that made people's souls tremble. Ning-shu's soft voice slowly read the words recorded in the booklet. At this moment, because of the content she was reading, her voice condensed into a layer of chilling ice. Even the few tender yellow sparrows on the flower shelf silently stopped chirping. Year 13 of Heaven's Selection, 17th of May. What bad luck. This time, we met with robbers again. They didn't even leave behind a single piece of skin for me. This trip was for nothing and I even lost my capital. Tomorrow, I will definitely kill the whole family of these robbers. The 14th year of Heaven's Selection, the 10th day of the 12th month. Counting this year, I've earned a total of 75 taels of silver. Not bad. I'm not young anymore. It's time for me to find a wife to play with. I heard that the Su family's daughter in the neighboring alley is quite pretty, hee. In the 14th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 23rd of December, matchmaker Zhang came over and said that when Miss Su heard that I was proposing marriage, she cried so hard that she wanted to hang herself. Son of a bitch. Isn't it because I'm ugly and poor? I'm going to throw a dead dog into their house tonight. Silvers, silvers, silvers. I'm going to earn a lot of silvers. When the day comes that my family is rich, I'm going to make those girls cry and beg me. In the 15th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 24th day of the 7th month, the price of everything in this year except for my wallet. F***ck his grandmother. I ruthlessly beat up Lin Yang from the magnificent tower. When that whore was begging for mercy, she said that her life was bitter. Her father gambled and sold her to a brothel. You don't say. If one is sold for 50 taels of silver, then wouldn't 10 be worth 500 taels of silver? If I sell 100 of them, wouldn't I be rich? Interesting. In the 15th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 7th day of the 9th month, I used a piece of candy to coax that little fatty from the long-gone alley. That brat foolishly followed me. I pinched him until he fainted and sold his head. I got 20 taels of silver. I have an idea. In the 15th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 15th day of the 10th month, I bought a few horses as a cover. Horses, you better obediently wait for me to sell you for money. If you're not obedient, I can only skin you and sell you as meat. In the 16th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 19th day of the 2nd month, when I was transporting people out of the city with Head Zhang, I was almost discovered by the officials. I was scared to death. Head Zhang said that there have been too many missing children in the capital recently. The officials are investigating very closely, so he doesn't dare to act rashly. He told me to do as I see fit. That son of a bitch. He wants to quit, but I still have a dozen little bastards tied up in my cellar. What should I do? In the 16th year of Heaven's Selection, on the 27th day of the 2nd month, a dozen little bastards. Feeding them every day costs me 1 tael of silver. F asterisk CK, F asterisk CK, F asterisk CK. If this goes on, I'm going to lose money again. Should I just kill them? In the 16th year of Heaven's selection, on the 6th day of the 3rd month, I have an idea. When I was selling leather goods to Southern Yin country, I happened to hear about something called a human bear. Chapter 188. Reading to this point, Ning Shu's voice came to an abrupt stop. She had already roughly flipped through it before, but at this moment, she still felt as if something cold had pierced her bones, causing her to feel cold from the inside out. It was difficult for her to read a single word from the book. This was because the evil of human nature recorded in the book was difficult to describe. Xia Hoqing's expression changed as he called out, "Juicy." He signaled for Juicy to bring the book over and read it for Ning Shu, but she refused. "No need, I can do it." Xia Hoqing frowned and disagreed. "Why are you blindly showing off? Are you trying to show off your bravery?" Ning Shu said in a low voice, "I'm not showing off. It's just that if I'm afraid of these few lines, then I don't need to continue working on this case." It had to be known that what really happened in this case was 10 times more terrifying than what was recorded in the book. She persisted like a thin bamboo that had just broken out of the ground not long ago. It was obvious that she could be broken by the strong wind and rain at any time, but she still stubbornly refused to bow down to anyone or anything. Her soft voice startled Xia Hoqing, as if the first cicada in early summer had stirred his heart. He turned his face away and sneered. "Do as you wish." He pursed his lips and listened to her shallow breathing. Then he awkwardly added, "If you can't read it, then slow down first. In any case, I won't die for a while, so there's no rush." His words were stiff, but there was a different kind of gentleness in his tone. It was like a warm sun in winter, making Ning Shu feel flattered for a moment. Was this the Crown Prince's way of expressing his concern? It was really special. Ning Shu couldn't help but smile. A small piece of the ice in her heart unknowingly melted, making her feel less cold. She took a deep breath and read the book in her hand word by word. This thing called a human bear turns a living person into a bear. First, he prepared a fresh bearskin that had just been peeled off. Then, he tied the selected person to a bamboo pole and flipped them over. Starting from the back of the neck, he scalded the skin with hot water and peeled it off bit by bit. Then, he pasted the fresh bearskin on it and wrapped it securely with a cloth. When the skin was done, the man-bear would be almost done. That drunken busker had told Lousy, "You must choose a child under the age of 10, the younger the better. That way, after being skinned, the flesh and blood will quickly grow together with the animal skin, and you won't be able to peel it off." About 1 out of 10 would survive. When they were alive, their tongues would be cut off so that they could no longer speak human language. Then they would be locked in cages for a long period of time, whipped and domesticated. They would be constantly told that they were beasts, born to be trampled upon by others. They would kowtow to others so that they would not have the slightest intention of rebellion. Once all these things were done, they could pretend to be demons caught in the mountains and drag them out to perform. Other than human bears, there were also human dogs, human wolves, and human sheep. Almost all of them were created in the same way. Those idiots on the streets definitely haven't seen this kind of new toy. Lousy has thought it through. I will first make a human wolf. 10 copper coins for a kowtow. 1 tael of silver for an auspicious message. There are so many rich young masters and young ladies in the capital. I can easily earn a lot of money. Little bastards, just wait obediently for Lousy. You have to live a little longer, ha ha. 16 years of natural selection, 7th of the 5th month, success. Success. 12 little bastards died, but one of them was finally revived for Lousy. However, Lousy has been kidnapping a little too many people recently, and the errand boys have been wandering around the area. This little wolf demon is a little troublesome. That's right, I will sell it to old son from the vaudeville class. When the time comes, we will split the money equally. 16 years of natural selection, 7th of the 6th month. Lousy has earned 80 taels in 1 month. Lousy is rich, haha. Don't worry, wait for Lousy to create a human sheep, then I will earn double the money. 16 years of natural selection, 15th of the 7th month, unlucky. The wolf demon that Laozi painstakingly created was actually killed by a little girl. Laozi really wants to strangle her to death, but she is the young miss of the Marquis estate, so I can only suffer in silence. Fortunately, that little girl paid a few taels of silver, so it's not a loss. Humph. What's there to be afraid of with one dead? Laozi can still create another one. 19 years of natural selection, 4th of the 4th month, old son from the vaudeville class died. Recently, I have been feeling that something is watching Laozi. I have earned quite a lot of money these 2 years, should I stop? Skipping a lot of useless nonsense in the middle, Ningshu quickly flipped to the page with this year's latest records. 25 years of natural selection, 3rd of the 3rd month, living hell. Recently, there have been people who have been stuffing notes into Laozi's room with the words, "Waiting for your death date." There is even a wolf claw printed on it. Fuck. What is this thing? Could it be the one from 9 years ago? 25 years of natural selection, 4th of the 4th month. It's over. That thing has finally found me. Chapter 189. In the thin booklet, the stench and filth of human nature were undoubtedly revealed. Every word seemed to be dripping blood, which made the listeners feel uncomfortable and nauseous. Huimo's hands trembled as he listened. He gritted his teeth and said, "This beast, no, this thing is worse than a pig or a dog. He can't even be regarded as a beast. It's too easy for him to die so easily. He should be dismembered into pieces." Finally, after reading the important parts of the booklet, Ningshu closed the booklet. She only felt a cluster of fire burning in her heart. She couldn't wait to drag Feng-san, who stretched out his evil hands to the children, back from hell and pay him back 10 times or 100 times what he had done. She exhaled a long breath and forcibly suppressed the cluster of fire in her heart. She analyzed. According to the records of this booklet and the known clues, we can roughly infer this part of the case. Feng-san first made a living by selling leather goods. Because of his ugly appearance and mediocre family background, he was disliked by others. He was resentful at first, evil at second, and greedy at second. He began to abduct children. But gradually, simply selling children could no longer satisfy his greed. So from 9 years ago, Feng-san made the children into wolf monsters and bear monsters. He cooperated with the leader of the juggling class to make money. Then, the child was accidentally killed by Qi Zhuanyu as an animal. In addition to that child, the number of children who were killed by him may be hundreds. At present, Feng-san is dead. Leader's son was also killed 6 years ago. Qi Zhuanyu became crazy. From the experience of these 3 people, I suspect that this series of cases was done by the relatives of the child who was killed that year. The purpose is very simple: revenge. A few days ago, after Qi Zhuanyu disappeared in the fragrant hall, it is very likely that she was taken to Feng-san's residence and trapped. Qi Zhuanyu's strange behavior of kowtowing and saying auspicious words, as well as the words "give me back my skin" in her mouth, all have an explanation. Because she saw with her own eyes that Feng-san was skinned alive, and then she saw the other party forcefully shove the skin peeled off from Feng-san's body into his stomach. Just thinking about that scene made her scalp tingle. Even the other party may have threatened Qi Zhuanyu to use the same method to deal with her. It would be strange if Qi Zhuanyu was not scared out of her wits. How can there be such an evil person like Feng-san? And that leader's son, he deserved to die. Including that Miss Qi, she thought they were livestock, so she wantonly killed them. What is the reason? Huimo's face was full of anger and confusion. The murderer we are looking for is obviously doing justice for heaven. If we really find him, according to the law, that person will definitely be severely punished. His life might even be in danger. Are we really doing the right thing? Ningshu sighed. I also hate people like Feng-san. I feel that he deserves to be punished, but the people who execute him shouldn't be anyone else, but the government. If everyone acted according to their own personal grievances, then the result would only be civil unrest. Everyone would be in danger, and order would be lost. How could the common people live a stable life then? Therefore, we can sympathize with the murderer, but we have to catch him. We have no other choice. Seeing that Huimo was still not convinced, Ningshu said again, "Do you know why the murderer killed Feng-san and leader's son, but only let Qi Zhuanyu go? She was scared out of her wits and was released? Guillermo guessed. Maybe it was because Qi Juanyu was young and ignorant at that time. Did she really think that the child was a monster and didn't deserve to die? Uncle Ning didn't express his opinion. Maybe, but maybe he had other plans. Guillermo was puzzled. What plans? He hated Qi Juanyu so much that he didn't want to kill her so quickly. So he wanted to do it slowly, just like a big cat that caught a mouse. He didn't rush to eat it, but held it in his palm and tortured it slowly. He had tasted loss, sadness and despair. Now he wanted to let Qi Juanyu's relatives taste it one by one. So he let Qi Juanyu go first so that the Qi family would have hope. Then he killed Qi Juanyu in front of the Qi family, turning the hope into 100 times more despair in an instant. Guillermo was stunned. Then the whole Qi family would go crazy. The sunlight in the middle of April was beginning to burn her eyes. So Ning Shu raised her hand to cover them and said softly, "Yes, this is the most terrifying and perfect revenge." Chapter 190. Guillermo still tried to insist. This is just your guess. The next revenge may not happen. Maybe the murderer has already stopped. Don't forget the sign, crazy, crazy and violent death. Xiaoqing, who had been listening to Ning Shu quietly under the west window, opened his mouth slowly and shattered Huimo's pure extravagance. Killing people can sometimes be addictive. He killed Leader Sun and Feng San with his own hands. When he killed the devil, he slowly turned himself into a devil. Isn't that thing the proof? Xiaoqing casually tossed the pair of jade chopsticks he had prepared for tea and snacks into the wooden basin, not far away that contained Feng San's stomach. Guillermo opened his mouth and lowered his head. He couldn't exonerate the murderer. Xiaoqing asked, "Besides this book, did you find any other clues or evidence?" Ning Shu answered honestly. There were a few notes which were mentioned by Feng San. Since last month they have been stuffed in his door. The handwriting on them was deliberately crooked, so it was difficult to tell who wrote them. The murderer was really a meticulous person. Now Child Tan is leading the officers of the Supreme Court to ask if they have seen any suspicious people in the Inma Alley recently. I hope he can find something. Although the hope might be a little slim, Ning Shu couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. However, Xiaoqing suddenly frowned. Child Tan? Are you familiar with him? Ning Shu was stunned for a moment and said, "Not very familiar." "Since you are not familiar with him, don't you think it is too careless to call an official of the Imperial Court so casually?" He looked very indifferent. Except for the slight frown just now, there was no unusual emotion on his face. However, Ning Shu still felt that he was faintly unhappy. After a moment of speechlessness, Ning Shu hurriedly said, "It's my fault for breaking the law. Your Highness, you are right. I will keep it in mind." She thought her attitude was sincere enough, but she didn't expect that Xiaoqing's face was even darker after hearing it. She sighed in her heart. She didn't know what she did to make this master unhappy. She had to tactfully shut her mouth and stop talking, so as not to add fuel to the fire. No sound could be heard from the other side of the tea table. Only her light, wind-like breathing could be heard. Xiaoqing could almost imagine that the girl sitting opposite him under the west window must have a very innocent expression on her face, pretending to be obedient. Perhaps she was thinking that he was too unreasonable and too difficult to please. She had known him for more than a month and still politely called him Your Highness. But she could already affectionately call Tan Siwei, whom she had only known for 3 or 4 days, young Master Tan. There really was a difference between being close and distant. According to Tianwen's report, a few days ago, Princess He Xian paid a special visit to Prime Minister Tan's residence. In the end, she and the Prime Minister's wife affectionately went to the West Market to buy brocade jewelry. Xiaoqing's lips curved up slightly. It was a smile that wasn't a smile, but it made Ning Shu feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. She silently reflected. Could it be that her efficiency was too low and she still hadn't solved the case, which made him dissatisfied? Just as she was reflecting, Xiaoqing, who had been silent for a long time, finally spoke. "Where do you plan to start investigating next?" Ning Shu, who had been tense the entire time, finally let out a sigh of relief. After a moment of silence, she said, Feng San is dead. We have no way of knowing which children he kidnapped and who their relatives are. However, I feel that Qi Zhuanyu's disappearance that night has a lot to do with the people around her. So I want to investigate first. Among the 6 maids and maids, I want to see if any of their relatives were kidnapped. Chapter 191. In addition, I'm thinking of another question. The fact that the other party spent 9 years to track down Feng San and take revenge shows that his ability may not be as strong as we think. However, to set up the case of the curse of the 8 characters in the palace and quietly kidnap and hide Qi Zhuanyu from the palace is not something an ordinary person can do. The contradiction between the two is very contradictory, and I really can't figure it out, unless Xiahou Qing's mind was unusually sharp. Before Ning Shu finished her words, he had already caught on. Are you trying to say that there is more than one culprit and more than one case in this case? Exactly. Ning Shu nodded hard. So far, the pieces of the demon wolf case have been pieced together, but when Siren's part is still unknown. There is no trace of connection between him and the demon wolf case. So is there a possibility that these 2 cases are independent of each other, but because of some unknown reason, they are invisibly linked together? Xiahou Qing agreed with her guess. Your guess is reasonable. Then let's follow this direction. It is very likely that the day the culprit of the demon wolf case is the day the truth of the curse of the 8 characters will be solved. This vague case was like a flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. After layers of analysis, they finally got the general outline. Ning Shu could not help but feel excited. She did not wait for a moment. She immediately got up and left, preparing to keep an eye on the Qi family. First, she wanted to check on the 6 maids and maids. Second, she wanted to always be on guard against the other half of the curse of the 8 characters, the unnatural death of Qi Zhuanyu. Just as she stepped out of the hall, Xiahou Qing suddenly called her from behind. Come back. Ha! She turned around. At this time, the afternoon sun showed a dazzling golden color. It passed through the delicate and complicated lines on the window lattice and fell on Xiahou Qing's body, shining brightly on him, as if he was glowing. In the golden light, he raised his head slightly and looked in the direction of Ning Shu, saying slowly, No one forced you to be brave and not afraid. You are not a machine to solve cases. You are a human, a woman. Anger, joy, pity, fear. You can have all the emotions a normal person should have. Don't suppress yourself. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment before she realized what he meant. She was obviously very resistant to the contents of Feng San's book, but she still forced herself to finish reading it. In her clear eyes, half of his jade-colored face was almost transparent under the sunlight, while the other half was in the shadows. It was dark and powerful. Under the intertwining of light and darkness, the curve of his face was particularly clear, and it was also particularly attractive. Ning Shu couldn't help but turn her face away. But too much emotion will affect the judgment of the case. What if I make a mistake or make a mistake? Xiahou Qing smiled faintly. His voice was as clear and deep as ever. What do you mean by relying on you alone? Then what's the use of me? Her heart skipped a beat. Ning Shu's cheeks crept up with a light cherry red color, just like the newly formed bud at the end of the flowering tree in the great Xianghua temple that was 10 li away. The layers of petals tightly wrapped around the red color. Young miss? Hearing Zigui's call, Ning Shu quickly came back to her senses and said, You just said that the maidservant called Caillou lost a younger brother, and has not found him yet. I'm listening. Go on. Zigui nodded and continued. The Huayu clan also lost a female cousin. That cousin was about the same age as her. She went missing in the 15th year of natural selection, during the Lantern Festival. What about Xiangjin? Her family didn't lose anyone. However, her childhood sweetheart's family lost a male cousin. There is no news of him to this day. No one knows if he is alive or dead. No one else has. When Ning Shu heard this, she immediately frowned. They had investigated a total of 6 families, and found that 3 families had lost their children. This probability was too high. This meant that there were many children who went missing every year in the capital, and many parents who cried in despair. Chapter 192. The harder it was to live, the more frequent the cases of young girls and children were. 10 years ago was the year of the disaster in the Hanjiang prefecture. 280,000 people died in one prefecture. Although the capital wasn't filled with starving people and corpses, the lives of many lower-class people were still extremely difficult. Think about it. When the adults couldn't survive, how could they spare the energy to protect their own children? Serves her right. Ning Shu and Zigui followed Xiang Jin all the way to secretly leave the Qi estate. They arrived at the home of her childhood sweetheart, the imperial bodyguard. Jumping up a tree, they hid behind the thick branches and quietly watched as Xiang Jin fed the imperial bodyguard medicine while cursing to her heart's content. If you ask me, it's because fourth young miss has done too many bad things. Now that she's met her retribution, she's become neither human nor ghost. She's so crazy, it really makes people happy. The imperial bodyguard worriedly said. You've been sneaking out these past few days. Aren't you too conspicuous? It's better if you quickly return to the estate. Otherwise, if someone finds out and reports it to master and madam, you'll be punished again. Being bedridden for a long time caused his entire body to become thin and yellow. However, one could still see from his tall frame and facial features that he was once a dignified youth. Unfortunately, he was buried by Qi Zhuanyu's hands. Xiang Jin didn't care at all. What are you afraid of? Right now the estate is in chaos. Everyone is surrounding fourth young miss, afraid that she'll go crazy from kowtowing or commit suicide by hitting the wall. Who has the time to care about where I go? If you ask me, since that wolf demon was able to secretly take revenge on her once, he can take revenge on her a second time. Even if everyone in the estate is watching, it's useless. She won't be able to escape. Although you say that, it's still better to be careful. First, if someone suspects that the matter is related to you, causing trouble for no reason, then it'll be hard to explain. Second, the imperial bodyguard turned his head and pretended to joke. Second, you've reached the age where you should marry. If you keep circling around a good-for-nothing like me, I'm afraid people will gossip. If this affects your good marriage, I, as your older brother, will feel guilty for the rest of my life. The coarse porcelain spoon in her hand fell back into the soup bowl with a clatter. Mei Jin stood up and bit her lip. What are you talking about? I've already said that I won't marry anyone other than you. What's more, the first person fourth miss wanted to punish that night was me. You were the one who took the punishment for me. You were injured because of me. Your body was crippled because of me. Do you want me to be that heartless and despicable woman? Tears welled up in the guard's eyes as he hammered the bed. His eyes were red as he said, There are many good men in this world. Why do you have to hang on to a piece of trash like me? You know that I won't be able to recover for the rest of my life, and will only be a burden to you. How can I give you happiness? 2 lines of tears slowly crept down Pagoda Jin's face. Her voice trembled as she said, I don't care about fate. You are my only fate in this life. Even if you're crippled, as long as you're still breathing, I'll be your bride for the rest of my life. If you die today, then I will be your widow, and I will guard your grave for the rest of my life. So don't even think about pushing me away. Why do you have to do this? Inside the house, the 2 unfortunate lovers hugged each other and cried bitterly. Ning Shu, who was hiding in the tree outside the house, felt her heart ache as she sighed. She quietly put the medicine that Hui Mo had made before on the windowsill. Ning Shu and Zigui quietly left. From the analysis of what she had heard just now, Pagoda Jin still thought that Qi Zhuanyu's ending today was because of the wolf demon's revenge. It seemed that she wasn't the one who did it. And the year when Kaiyu and Huiyu's children were abducted didn't match the time when Feng San did evil. The case once again fell into a bottleneck. Chapter 193. Logically speaking, after eliminating the suspects one by one, the remaining one, even if it was impossible, would definitely be the murderer. But the problem was that all the suspects had been eliminated, and not a single one was left. Ning Shu tossed and turned all night, constantly calculating all kinds of possibilities in her mind, but she rejected them again and again. It was only when the sun was about to rise that she vaguely slept for a few hours. When she woke up in the morning, she saw that there were dark circles under her eyes. like the iron-eating beast recorded in the Book of Strange Things. She smiled bitterly and rubbed her dizzy temples. For the third day in a row, she went to the Qi estate to spy. Qi Jiuyu had been crazy all night last night, and the servants of the Qi estate were all exhausted, leaning against the doors ill and dozing off. Only a few guards were still healthy, and still had the energy to sit in the corridor and chat. I originally thought that fourth young miss had received a great fortune, and was chosen to be the princess consort of the Namping prince. When I heard the news from the palace that day, Master and Madam were extremely happy and said that they were going to hold a 10-day banquet to celebrate. Who would have thought that she would fall into such a situation today? This great fortune has turned into a great misfortune. It's really unpredictable and unpredictable. AI, that's right. Fourth young Miss's appearance at night was very frightening. Do you guys think that there really was a wolf demon causing trouble? Otherwise, why would fourth young Miss be like that? Yes. When she was angry, she would kowtow while muttering things like "Don't skin me, spare my life." TSK, just thinking about it makes me shiver. You guys are really naive. If that wolf demon was really so powerful, how could it have been easily killed by young Miss 9 years ago? You guys have all been deceived. I think that fourth young Miss's current appearance was actually caused by the 13th princess. The two of them had been fighting for the position of Shizi's wife for a long time. Who would have thought that in the end, the fourth miss would be chosen? The 13th princess was jealous, so she secretly played dirty. Then, she used the wolf demon as a cover to deceive people. Do you remember that on the day fourth young miss disappeared, the 13th princess pushed her into the water in front of the empress? It's only because she's an imperial princess, the emperor's daughter, that the government didn't dare to close the case. I also think that makes sense. Other than an imperial princess, who else has the ability to make a living person disappear without a trace in the palace? Then what about the curse of the 8 characters? Could it be that the 13th princess knew in advance that our young miss would be chosen? What if she was the one chosen in the end? It's ridiculous to curse yourself. Alright, all of you stop quarreling. If you ask me, I'm afraid the 13th princess will get what she wants. That's not necessarily true. Why not? Which prince's mansion would be willing to take a crazy, delirious person as their princess? Although the Duke of Nanping's estate hasn't brought up the matter of breaking off the engagement, it's only because of Consort Qi and our Marquis's estate. Yesterday, when I was on duty, I heard Master and Madam discussing. They said that Daoist Zhang of Xianqing Temple was invited to take a look. Fourth young Miss's mind is not clear right now because of the displacement of her 3 souls and 7 spirits. They want to do a grand ceremony to invite the person who is related to her by blood and has the most honorable position to summon her scattered soul back to its original position. At that time, fourth young Miss will be able to return to normal. Isn't Imperial Concubine Qi the one with the most honorable status and blood relatives? Would he be able to return to normal after performing a ritual? Is this true or false? The guards chatted with great relish and even began to argue, treating this matter as a joke. Mother Hui had just walked out of the room when she heard this. She immediately frowned and reprimanded. How dare you talk about master's matters like this? Are you itching for a beating? Why aren't you scramming and doing your job properly? Only then did the guards disperse like birds and beasts and disperse to do their work. Only Mother Hui stood in place and let out a long sigh. Chapter 194. Seeing Ning Shu walking over, Mother Hui hurriedly stepped forward and asked expectantly, Lady Ning, is there any progress in my young Miss's case? Who is the one who harmed my young miss? Ning Shu smiled bitterly as an answer. This old servant also knows that this case is very difficult. Otherwise, the government wouldn't have been unable to solve the case for so many days. However, I still have to trouble Lady Ning to worry. Mother Hui used to be a servant in the palace, so her words and actions were all appropriate. This is my duty. Mother Hui, don't worry. I will do my best. While the two were exchanging pleasantries, Ning Shu's gaze shifted and found a sachet beside Mother Hui's feet. The color of the sachet was a bit old, as if it was an antique from many years ago. The red cotton sachet was embroidered with a square Fu character. Ning Shu recognized this thing. It was called Fu Bao. Many children before the age of 10 would wear a red Fu Bao, which contained more than 10 kinds of medicinal herbs and spices to ward off evil spirits. Her mother and Princess Xian had also personally embroidered one for Ji. Now they even asked Ji to carry it with her. Ning Shu bent down to pick it up and put it in the palm of her hand. She curiously asked, "Who does this Fu Bao belong to?" Mother Hui hurriedly put the Fu Bao into her arms and said, "Oh, this is the Fu Bao that my young miss used to wear when she was a child. Later, my young miss grew up and no longer used it, so this old servant took it and kept it. These days, my young miss suffered a lot. I occasionally thought of it, so I took it out and continued to wear it. It can be considered to be a blessing for my young miss." Ning Shu nodded. Then, as usual, she asked Mother Hui a few questions about the night Qi Juanyu went missing. Unsurprisingly, she did not find any useful information. Ning Shu paused for a moment. She really didn't have anything to ask, so she casually said, "I remember that day when I went to the Fragrant Palace to visit fourth young miss. I happened to see the old concubines and concubines of the palaces send a pile of gifts. May I ask where those gifts are now? Can you let me have a look?" The reward you were talking about." Mother Hui was stunned for a moment, as if she was recalling carefully. Then she said, "That evening, Miss told me to send it back to the residence before the palace gate was locked. After that, I wasn't in charge of it anymore. It should have been kept in the storeroom. I'll ask later and get back to you. I'll have to trouble you then." Before the two of them could finish, they heard the room bustling with activity again. Qi Juanyu's screams of struggle could be heard incessantly. "Mother Hui, where is Mother Hui?" The servant girls hurriedly ran out to ask for help. "Mother Hui, quickly come back to the room. Young miss is in trouble again." Mother Hui looked worried. She hurriedly bowed to Ning Shu and left, returning to her room. Not long after she entered the house, the movement inside quieted down, and Qi Jiaoyu regained her calm. Outside the room, Ning Shu's expression changed. She casually pulled a servant girl aside and asked, "Does your miss look for Mother Hui whenever she falls ill?" "Yes, it's strange. When Miss falls ill, she doesn't acknowledge anyone and only shouts that she wants to escape. Even if Madam comes personally to coax her, it's useless. Miss will only be quiet for a moment when she sees Mother Hui. Therefore, Mother Hui has been personally taking care of Miss these few days. She's basically never left her side. It's really hard on her, but Mother Hui doesn't complain at all." "When did Mother Hui enter the residence?" "About 8 or 9 years ago. I don't remember the details. It's been quite a long time. She's very close to Mississippi. When she left the palace, she wasn't young anymore. Thus, she hasn't married and has been helping to educate the young ladies in each residence. She's been in our Qi residence for the longest time. She often says that she doesn't have any children, so she treats Miss as her child. Take the disappearance of Miss as an example. She blamed herself very much and went out with the servants to look for Miss every day. She's really devoted to it." On the other hand, Kaiyun and Guijin were the ones who lost Miss, but they didn't panic at all and couldn't see her. They act as if nothing had happened all day. It's really disgraceful. Ning Shu listened carefully. A trace of deep thought flashed through her eyes. She softly replied, "Oh." Chapter 195. In the room, Qi Xiaoyu made a ruckus for a long time before she finally calmed down under Mama Hui's pacification. Ning Shu did not urge her, so she waited in the courtyard. After waiting for nearly a moment, the maidservant named Yu Chu ran out with the key to the storeroom with sweat all over her forehead. She repeatedly said, "Lady Ning, sorry to keep you waiting. This servant will take you to the storeroom. This way, please." That evening, after the reward was sent back to the Fu, we did not have time to tidy it up before we received the news that the fourth miss was missing. So we hurriedly piled it up here, and did not have the time to take care of it. Yu Chu said as she unlocked the door. The door was pushed open with a squeak. "The things inside are a bit messy. What does Lady Ning want to look for? This servant will find it for you." "No need, I'm just looking around." Ning Shu stepped into the storeroom, and found that the things were indeed piled up in a disorderly manner in the corner of the storeroom. At that time, in order to celebrate Qi Zhaoyu's selection of the heir consort, the concubines of the palaces had instructed the servants to choose some festive brocade boxes to hold the gifts. But these bright red and purple colors seemed inexplicably ironic and dazzling at this time. Ning Shu casually opened a few brocade boxes and noticed that there were 2 deep brocade boxes at the bottom. They were more than 3 feet long. She asked, "What's inside?" "Oh, that's the silk and satin that the concubines have bestowed. Among them, there are 2 bolts of silk and satin bestowed by concubine Qi. Those are tributes that are rarely produced in a year. I heard that it's very rare and ordinary people have never seen it before." Ning Shu smiled and said, "Then I really want to see it. Please help me." Ning Shu moved the brocade boxes piled on top of the storeroom and bent down to open the brocade boxes. She found that the silk and satin inside was of excellent quality. She touched it lightly and felt that it was as smooth as water. She was about to unfold it to take a closer look when her sharp nose suddenly smelled a pungent smell. Then she heard Yu Chu gasp and shout, "Lady Ning, be careful." In front of Ning Shu's eyes, less than a foot away from her hand, the silk and satin in the brocade box suddenly burst into sparks and spread rapidly. Ning Shu subconsciously withdrew her hand. Her scalp went numb, and her survival instinct made her take a few steps back. When he looked again, he saw that the brocade box had already ignited into a ball of fire. Moreover, it was spreading at an extremely fast speed in all directions, burning dozens of brocade boxes in the surroundings. In an instant, thick smoke billowed in the storehouse, and tongues of fire soared into the sky. Cough, cough. The thick smoke was extremely pungent. Ning Shu immediately covered her mouth and nose. She grabbed Yu Chu, who was foolishly trying to extinguish the fire by himself. "Don't worry about it. Let's go." This unforeseen event happened too quickly. Yu Chu was completely dumbfounded. It wasn't until he was dragged out of the warehouse by Ning Shu that he suddenly regained his senses and shouted, "Someone come quickly. The warehouse is on fire. It's on fire." Following her shout, the nearby servants hurriedly organized to put out the fire, but the fire was too big. It was not until 2 hours later that the last spark was extinguished. When they walked into the storeroom to take a look, the inside was already a mess. All the silk and satins had been burned to black ash. Even the gold, jade, and jewelry had been burned beyond recognition. All the treasures in the storeroom were gone. Yu Chu was so scared that her legs went soft. She knelt on the ground and said with tears in her eyes, "I ask Lady Ning to testify for this servant. This fire was really not set by this servant. It really has nothing to do with me. Any one of the things in the storeroom was worth more than her little life. Now that everything had been burned, her little life was over." Ning Shu pulled her up from the ground and comforted her in a low voice. Of course she knew that it was not Yu Chu who did it. She was right beside her at the time, so there was no chance for her to do anything. But where did this inexplicable fire come from? There was not a single candle in the storeroom, not a single spark. There was not even a trace of sunlight shining in, so how could it suddenly be on fire? It was simply unbelievable. And this inconceivable thing had happened right under her nose. Was it really an accident? Or did someone want to destroy something important, and did not want her to see it? If it was the latter, then what was that thing? A series of questions appeared in her mind, just like the black water mixed with ashes that constantly flowed in front of her eyes, making her completely puzzled. While she was deep in thought, the maidservant Huiyu stumbled and ran over in a daze. Her voice was filled with panic as she cried, "Not good. Not good. That blood claw print has appeared again. There are so many, so densely packed. It's at the 4th young Miss bedside." Chapter 196. And Huiyu swallowed hard, her whole body trembling, and said in a trembling voice, "And this time it's all because of 4th Miss herself." Then she couldn't continue, as if she had just seen the most terrible thing in the world. Ning Shu immediately rushed to Qi Zhuanyu's small courtyard. Looking at the scene in front of her, she finally knew why Huiyu was so scared, because anyone who saw it would feel their scalp tingle, and then they would be horrified. This was because Qi Zhuanyu was standing on the bed that was carved with exquisite patterns. Her hands were covered in blood, and her back was facing the crowd. She was seriously drawing a mark in the shape of a wolf's claw on the snow-white wall. The paint she was using was her own boiling hot blood. On the wide wall, she had already drawn the entire wall densely. Madam Chi, who heard the news, saw this scene and took a deep breath, almost fainting, and was hurriedly supported by a servant. Chi Juanyu turned her head, smiled at the crowd, and then lowered her head, gently licked her own blood on her fingers, and asked flatteringly, "Look what I drew, doesn't it look like it?" Madam Chi was in tears. "Oh my God! Juanyu, my son. What are you doing? You're trying to kill your mother, ah. Someone come and stop her. Quickly stop her, ah." It took more than 10 people to forcefully snatch the scissors from Chi Dianyu's hands. Then they used soft cloth to tie her up. Only then did they stop her from committing suicide. Then they hurriedly called for a doctor to treat her wounds. Mother Hui held Chi Juanyu, who was still screaming and struggling with red eyes. Kai Yin was so scared that her face was pale, and she knelt and begged for mercy. "Master, madam, this servant really didn't expect that Miss would steal this servant's scissors. Please spare my life." Lord Chi looked at his daughter, who had completely gone crazy on the bed, frowning and sighing silently, again and again. Beside him, Madam Chi cried and said, "Master, the ritual. Quickly go and ask Zhang Daozhang to arrange the ritual to summon the soul. In 5 days, no, in 3 days, he had to summon her soul back to her body. Otherwise, if this goes on, or will not be safe." Sobs could be heard everywhere. In the midst of the sobbing, Ning Shu's eyes glide across the faces of Mother Hui, Pagoda Jean, Huiyu Kaiyun like a sharp knife, trying to cut through the fog of chaos and find the truth. Rain began to fall from the sky at an unknown time. It was not heavy, but it was as fine as needles. Not a single ray of light could be seen in the horizon. The entire sky was dark and gloomy, as if the entire Chi residence had been dragged into a gloomy abyss. Ning Shu stood in the corridor and raised her head to look at the sky that was shrouded in dark clouds. She thought about all the strange and complicated events that were laid out in front of her eyes. She was deep in thought when she suddenly heard the footsteps of Lien Qiao approaching from afar. Forsythia whispered excitedly, "Miss, we found the silversmith who made the longevity lock." It was rare to hear good news, so Ning Shu couldn't help but be excited. "Really? That's great. Where is it? Quickly take me there." There was no time to open an umbrella, so Ning Shu quickly boarded the carriage in the fine and dense rain. Jia. Hui Mo flicked his whip, and the 2 horses carried the carriage to the south of the city at the fastest speed. In the carriage, Forsythia excitedly reported, "It is an old and famous silversmith shop in the south of the city. We followed Mrs. Method and checked each shop one by one. It shouldn't have been difficult to find it, but the owner of this shop went back to his hometown to visit his relatives a few days ago, so we missed it. Fortunately, we didn't give up and went to look again today, so we found it. I've asked the boss for help, and he's waiting for us in the shop right now." Ning Shu smiled and praised, "Good, Forsythia, I will remember your great merit." Chapter 197. The horse galloped, splashing out transparent water. Ning Shu, who was in the carriage, arrived at the southern part of the city at the fastest speed. With Hui Mo's shout, they slowly stopped in front of a shop. After getting off the carriage, Ning Shu immediately took the longevity lock and walked in. Sure enough, the boss kept his word and waited for them in the shop. Ning Shu respectfully gave a bow and said, "Hello, old mister. May I ask if this longevity lock was made by you?" This was an old shop with a history of 100 years. The boss was an old man in his 50s with white hair and beard. However, he had sharp ears and eyes. He only took a glance at the longevity lock and said, "Of course. Every silversmith shop has its own inheritance. The older the shop, the longer the inheritance. In order to distinguish our craftsmanship from other shops, we will make a small mark on the inconspicuous place of the objects that we make. This way, no matter how long it has been, we can recognize our own objects at a glance. For example, on this longevity lock, I engraved an extra cloud pattern compared to other shops. So this longevity lock must be made by my family. Then, may I ask if you still remember the appearance of the person who asked you to make this longevity lock? Which family does he belong to? Then you must be joking. The old mister was amused. This thing is made by me, but it looks like an old object from 20 or 30 years ago. It has been so long. How can I remember who made it? Please don't make things difficult for an old man like me. It's getting late, and the rain is getting heavier. I should close the shop. Miss, please. Ning Shu sighed and raised her head again. Her eyes were filled with tears. When she saw the old mister, she hurriedly said, "What's going on? It's just a longevity lock. How can Miss be like this?" Ning Shu lowered her head and used a handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes. She said, "Old mister, you may not know this, but this longevity lock is actually a relic left behind by my aunt. My aunt met with a great disaster when she was young and was abducted. Later on, she suffered countless hardships before she was able to marry into my family. After a few days of good days, she contracted a serious illness and died. She had no children, so she always took care of me as her own daughter. Before she died, she took my hand and said that her biggest regret in this life was that there was no way to find her biological parents. I was young at that time, so I didn't remember it clearly. A few days ago, my aunt came to my dream and cried to me. She said that I was young and incompetent at that time, but she didn't blame me. But now that I have grown up, I must help her. Otherwise, she will never be able to reincarnate in peace. So it's like this." The old mister was soft-hearted. He couldn't help but sigh after listening to the story. "Ah, that's really a tragic thing." The old mister took the longevity lock and carefully looked at it. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly said, "I remember now. I made this lock not long after I finished my apprenticeship, so I made it very carefully. It took me a lot of effort. The person who came to make this lock seemed to be a pregnant madam. As for what she looked like, it's been 37 years, so I can't remember clearly. I only have a vague impression of her. That madam's temperament was very good. At a glance, I can tell that she came from a noble family. Sir, you are a famous craftsman in the capital. Every year, there are countless people who ask you to make jewelry for them. In the past 30 years, you have seen at least 100 noble ladies and young ladies, but you still have a vague impression of the one from 30 years ago. You must have seen something strange at that time, or heard something special that left a deep impression on you. You still can't forget it even now. I'll have to trouble Mister to think about it carefully." Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "For example, according to what you said, that madam was obviously a noble from a noble family. Why did she only use the most common silver for the longevity lock and not the gold, jade, and jewelry that was more suitable for her status? Didn't you have any questions at that time?" "Hey, you don't say. I really did ask at that time." After Ning Shu's reminder, the old mister's memory that had been silent for more than 30 years slowly emerged in front of his eyes. "At that time, I was still a young man in my early 20s. I saw that madam's clothes and bearing were very good, but she only wanted to make a silver longevity lock. I felt very strange, so I asked the question you just mentioned. At that time, that madam was stunned for a long time and didn't say anything. Her face was very ugly. I thought, could it be that my question was too abrupt and offended a noble? I was worried about how to ask for forgiveness, but I didn't expect that madam to gently touch her belly and vaguely say, 'I don't deserve it. Don't deserve it.' Yes, at that time, her voice was very soft, like she was sighing. Her face was also snow white. I have seen all kinds of people in my life, but I have never seen a second person like that madam. Her face didn't show any joy of being pregnant. Instead, it was very..." The old mister thought for a long time and finally found the right word. "Yes, despair. I felt that she didn't look forward to the child in her belly at all. Even when she said those words, she was full of resentment. I thought that every family has its own difficulties. Perhaps this madam encountered something bad, so I didn't ask any more questions." 3 days later, her servant came to take the lock. After that, I didn't see her again. As for which family's madam she was, she kept it a secret from beginning to end and didn't say a word. Chapter 198. Youth is like water. Time is like a knife. More than 30 years of time, more than 10,000 sunrises and sets, the moon waxing and waning. This merciless cycle of the sun and moon was enough to turn a newborn baby into a middle-aged woman, a woman who loved her grandchildren. It was also enough to turn a young girl who was as beautiful as a flower bud into white hair. After such a long time, trying to find such a person in the vast sea of people in the capital, just thinking about it gave her a headache. Not to mention, her name was unknown, her appearance was unknown, and her identity was tightly concealed. Except for a few vague descriptions from the old gentleman, there was nothing left. In contrast, perhaps even ascending to heaven was easier than this. Ningxu silently looked at the sky. My God, you really like to joke with me, ah. After solemnly thanking the old gentleman, she bid farewell. Unknowingly, the rain became heavier. The snow-white viburnum flowers on the roadside scattered in the rain. The roof of the carriage made a light padding sound, but it was unknown whether it was the raindrops or the flowers. Ningxu was deep in thought amidst this pleasant sound. She opened the carriage curtain, reached out and caught a few drops of rain from the air, and slowly wrote on the small table in front of her. Time, more than 30 years ago. In terms of age, it was more likely that Mother Hui was the one. But after leaving the palace, she had never married, not to mention being pregnant. Moreover, she was only released from the palace 20 years ago. Before that, she had been working in the palace. From the time, she could be ruled out. In addition, according to the old gentleman, the madam's temperament was extraordinary. At first glance, one could tell that she came from a noble family. There were several servants serving her. Although Mother Hui was an etiquette instructor in the palace, in the end, she was a servant. The thin calluses on her hands were different from the old gentleman's description. Then who could this person be? Or some old imperial concubine in the palace? No, it couldn't be. Not to mention that it was difficult for the imperial concubines to leave the palace, who served them in bed, who was pregnant. These were things that couldn't be concealed. Not to mention, the imperial family's heirs, even if they weren't valued, were still the most honorable bloodline in the Great Yu country. Why would the madam say that she wasn't worthy? Also, what was the connection between this and the literary talent who died silently? Ningxu came up with countless speculations, but they were all rejected by her. For a moment, her head was spinning. She lifted the curtain of the carriage, intending to breathe in some fresh air and change her train of thought. Her gaze accidentally slipped and fell on an official building on the side of the road. Judging from the style of the residence, it seemed to be an official's residence, but the people who went in and out were women and children. Ningxu's curiosity was piqued and she asked, "Where is that?" Huiyemo looked over and said, "Oh, let me see. It's written on the plaque. CIU Bureau?" Ningxu nodded. After the carriage passed by, an idea suddenly popped up in her mind. This idea came too quickly, giving her a flash of inspiration. She hurriedly called out, "Stop the carriage." "Ah, why did you stop?" Huiyemo doesn't know why, so he sighs. Before the carriage stops, Ningxu has already jumped down from the carriage. Forsythia opens the umbrella and hurriedly follows her. While following her footsteps, Forsythia curiously asked, "Miss, what is CIU Bureau?" Even with an umbrella, the wind and drizzle still wet Ningxu's clothes and her black hair, but she didn't care at all. This is a special place to adopt and abandon babies. It is full of abandoned babies. Some of them were born with disabilities, some of them were born with serious diseases, so they were casually abandoned on the side of the road and left to die. There are also some biological parents who are really poor and can't raise them, so they quietly put them at the door of the rich families around them, hoping to survive. Some of the lucky ones were adopted by rich families, while some of the unlucky ones were bitten to death by wild dogs before they even had the chance to cry, becoming food in their stomachs. When the late emperor was traveling incognito, he met a baby who was frozen to death in the snow. He was very sad, so he ordered the establishment of CIU Bureau to adopt these children. There are wet nurses to take care of them. Those who don't have children can come to adopt them. Forsythia was even more puzzled after hearing this. Why are we here? They can't be here to adopt children, right? Ningxu stepped into the CIU Bureau, turned back and smiled. Her eyes were surprisingly bright. Because we are likely to find a very important clue here. Chapter 199. Ning Shu thinks of something. She turns back and says to Huema, who is confused, "Brother Huema, please go back to the mansion and ask His Highness for an assistant for me." "I'm here. Why do you need to ask someone else?" Huema snorts with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He doesn't know how to fight, examine corpses, use knockout drugs, and dress up as a woman. Ning Shu smiles and gently raises her eyebrows. "So Brother Huema is willing to check the files with me?" Huema's scalp is numb. When he thinks of the experience of looking for records with her in the Ministry of Revenue, his little heart trembles and shrinks. He is not afraid of anything else. Only when he sees a lot of words, especially a lot of words, he feels dizzy. Without saying another word, he immediately raised his horsewhip. "No problem, I'll go back to the mansion and capture him. A Taoist would rather die than a Taoist like himself. Brother, I've let you down." Hearing Ning Shu's request, the steward of the CIU Bureau refuses to nod at first. It is not until Ning Shu takes out the seal of Prince Namping's mansion that he is reluctantly allowed to enter. Ning Shu silently curses. These days, people really treat people with disdain. I am the Duke Ning's daughter, but I can't even compare with Xia Hoqing's token. What kind of world is this? Jussi is worthy of being trained by Xia Hoqing. It doesn't take long for him to arrive. He reads the files with Ning Shu. These files have been yellow and brittle for a long time. They are covered with a thick layer of dust. As soon as she picks up a roll, Ning Shu chokes on the dust and sneezes. But now is not the time to be delicate. Gently brushing the dust off the file, Ning Shu turns to the first page. Outside the house, the rain rolled down along the eaves and formed a curtain. The warm orange light in the house reflected her silhouette on the wall beside her. In the silhouette, she lowered her head slightly and buried herself in the book in her hand, carefully reading line by line. Then she flipped to the next page, focused and serious, tireless, like a quiet painting. The brand new candle in the lampshade silently dripped tears as the book was flipped. It gradually shortened until it was extinguished. Then it was replaced with a new one. Unknowingly, the rain quietly stopped, and the outside of the house was lit up. In the blink of an eye, it was already the second day. Forsythia had already dozed off with a file in her arms. Suddenly she heard a voice. "Found it." She suddenly sobered up and saw her mistress take the file from Jussi. Her mistress's eyes were filled with complex thoughts as she murmured, "Sure enough, it's her." She closed her eyes and let out a long, silent sigh. Stepping out of the Tsiyo bureau, she felt tired and hungry. Ning Shu rubbed her aching neck. Just as she was thinking about which breakfast shop nearby had a unique taste so she could eat a full meal to recover her strength, she didn't expect that the carriage of the Southern Pacifying Wang Fu was already waiting at the door. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. A jade-white hand lifted the curtain, and a slightly impatient voice came from inside. "What are you doing standing there like a fool? Come up." Ning Shu quickly got on the carriage. Looking at the person inside, she softly said, "Has your highness been waiting for a long time?" Xia Hoqing's expression was as indifferent as ever, without a trace of emotion. He lightly said, "You think too much. You just arrived." Ning Shu curled her lips, ridiculing his duplicity in her heart. From the wet ponytail and the wet marks around the carriage, it was obvious that he had been waiting here before the rain stopped. And from the time the rain stopped until now, at least 2 hours had passed. Ridiculing was ridiculing, but there was a trace of warmth in her heart. "This box, open it." Xia Hoqing casually pointed at the table. Ning Shu blinked her eyes. "What's inside?" "Don't you always boast that your sense of smell is sharp and you can't smell it?" Ning Shu's nose lightly sniffed, and her eyes lit up like a crescent moon. Opening it, it was as expected. The box was divided into 3 layers. The top layer had 8 kinds of snacks, the middle layer had 4 fresh dishes, and the bottom layer had a bowl of thick rice soup that emitted tempting steam. After a night of hunger, eating anything else at this time was not suitable. Only a bowl of thick and fragrant rice soup was the most appetizing. And it wouldn't make the stomach feel uncomfortable. Feeling grateful, Ning Shu said with a smile, "Thank you, Your Highness." Xia Hoqing hooked the corner of his mouth and sneered. "If I remember correctly, when I saved your life, I didn't get such a serious thank you." Ningshu's beautiful face silently blushed, and she felt a little guilty. It seemed that it was true. After eating the snacks and the bowl of rice soup, she felt her soul return to her body, and even her thoughts became a lot clearer. Listening to Ningshu's simple description of what she had learned in the past few days, Xiahou Qing's expression changed slightly. So you already have an answer in your heart about who the culprit is? Ningshu nodded, swallowing the last bite of the snack. It can't be considered as completely solved, but I have a basic guess about the curse of the 8 characters, and how Qi Zhuanyu silently disappeared from the fragrant hall. But according to the clues we have, there is no legal crime against the culprit, and we still lack a conclusive evidence that can't be denied. As for this piece of evidence, it could only be obtained at a specific time. If my estimation is correct, this case can be concluded in 3 days. Why 3 days? Because Madame Qi believes that Qi Zhuanyu's madness is caused by her soul being separated, so she decided to perform a ritual for Qi Zhuanyu in 3 days to summon her scattered soul back. At that time, concubine Qi will also participate. So if the culprit wants to make a move, that day is the best time. Chapter 200. A gentle breeze lifted a corner of the carriage curtain. A jasper flower hung down outside the carriage. It had accumulated a night's worth of rain, so it was heavy. Ningshu raised her head to look at the flower falling silently from the receptacle. She reached out to catch it. Looking at the pure white flower in her palm, Ningshu said softly, "However, this case involves not only the death of Wen Kairan in pregnancy 6 years ago and the demon wolf case 9 years ago. There are many more unspeakable secrets. When these old matters are revealed to the public, it will inevitably set off a huge wave. And outside of that wave, I'm afraid that countless people's blood and tears will be added." Ningshu reached out to let the pure white flower return to dust. Suddenly, she heard a series of hurried horse hooves behind her. She looked back and saw Zigui on the horse's back with a hurried expression. "Miss, the Qi family's ritual has been brought forward. Yesterday, Qi Zhuanyu did something to harm herself. Mistress Qi did not sleep the entire night. After discussing with Lord Qi, they asked Daoist Zhang from Xianqing Monastery to perform the ritual for Qi Zhuanyu today. The time will be set at noon." Ningshu's expression turned cold. She immediately had an ominous premonition and said, "Hurry! It's now 7:15. There are still more than 2 hours before noon. If we hurry over, we might be able to stop that from happening." 2 hours ago, inside Chengqian Palace, a palace made carefully knelt on the ground. After trimming Consort Qi's nails, she carefully dyed her red nails stroke by stroke. On the chaise lounge embroidered with golden phoenix peonies, Consort Qi supported her chin with her hand. She faced her trusted eunuch who was bowing beside her and asked, "How is the investigation of the ghost bee?" The eunuch named Jing Zhong trembled as he said, "Reporting to your highness, this servant has brought people to search the entire imperial garden, but did not find any traces of the poisonous bee. The 13th princess has also sent spies to investigate, but also did not find." Consort Qi's beautiful face was slightly distorted due to anger. Then why did Xiao Zhongping say that he personally saw a poisonous bee stinging Zhuanyu that day in the imperial garden? Jing Zhong was extremely terrified, and he knelt on the ground with a plop. "I beg Nyang Nyang to judge clearly. That year, the beekeeper from Nanjiang was personally silenced by this servant. His heart was pierced with a knife, and he died on the spot. His youngest daughter was also strangled by this servant. After killing the 2 of them, this servant threw their corpses into the river to feed the fish to ensure their safety. This servant then stood guard by the river for 4 hours, but I didn't see any corpses floating up. Only then did I dare to leave. It's impossible for the 2 of them to come back to life." His back was almost soaked in cold sweat. He tried to clear his mind, rolled his eyes, and said, "I think that maybe when Chiron revealed something to 13th Princess before he died. 13th Princess has been holding back for so many years in order to wait for an opportunity. She happened to wait for that day. So she took the opportunity to set up a trap and deliberately told you about the poisonous bee in public to trick you?" Consort Qi suspiciously narrowed her eyes. After a while she said, I never thought that this girl would be this cunning at such a young age. It really makes this one have a whole new level of respect for her, just like her cheap mother. She looked calm on the surface, not fighting for anything, but when this one was fighting for favor with noble Lady May, she took the chance to win His Majesty's favor, allowing him to favor her again. If it wasn't for Dr. Zhang finding this clue and reporting it to me, this one would have been fooled by that cheap woman. Jing Zhong wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said in a flattering voice, "She is just a lowly maid, but she wants to compete with the sun and moon. She simply doesn't know life and death. Consort Qi, you are kind enough to leave her corpse intact. You told this servant to say that that cheap woman should be cut to pieces." Consort Qi looked down and looked at the medicine the maid had applied to her. She coldly curled her red lips. That cheap woman is already dead and her corpse is already rotten, so it isn't a problem. As for the little cheap woman she left behind, this one has always wanted to get rid of this trouble. It's a pity that I don't know where she cultivated her good fortune, but she actually gained the backing of old Princess Yu. This one wanted to make a move, but I couldn't find a chance. If this one finds out that she was the one who did this, then don't blame this one for cutting the grass and roots. The last 4 words were incomparably sinister, making Jing Zhong's heart tremble. He only dared to lower his head with a smile, not daring to say a single word. After Consort Qi was silent for a while, she changed the topic. "Has there been any news of the Southern Peace King's manor canceling the engagement?" "Not yet." Consort Qi nodded. "That's good. This one has worked hard for so long in order to obtain the assistance of the Southern Peace King's manor. I didn't expect that child Jue you would encounter such a strange thing. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and that Ning Shu are all a bunch of useless good-for-nothings. They still haven't solved the case. They are simply stupid." Jing Zhong thought for a moment, then said, "Madam Qi just sent a message saying that the soul summoning ceremony has been set up at Xianqing Temple, and is only waiting for Consort Qi. When the ceremony is over, Consort Qi will summon 4th young Mrs. Scattered Soul back. At that time, 4th young Miss will definitely return to normal. Then, the position of the Southern Peace King's heir consort will still be in Consort Qi's hands." Qi Fei stood up and let out a soft sigh. "That's the best outcome. This one has watched Jue Yu grow up since she was young, and her personality is very similar to this one. Even if it wasn't for the position of the Southern Peace King's heir consort, this one still hopes that she can be safe and sound. Since it has been set up, then follow this one." Jing Zhong signaled with his eyes, and a few palace maids immediately came over to help Consort Qi change her clothes and set up the sedan. This servant obeys. After helping Consort Qi into the sedan, a total of 16 eunuchs lifted the sedan. 6 personal palace maids followed closely behind, standing on both sides of the sedan, ready to listen to Consort Qi's orders at any time. Behind the sedan, Jing Zhong lowered his head and gently touched his face. After a moment of absent-mindedness, he immediately strode forward to serve Consort Qi. Chapter 201. Xianqing Temple. In order to let Qi Juanyu wake up earlier, Madame Qi ordered people to set up the Taoist hall at night. When the auspicious time arrived and concubine Qi arrived, Taoist Zhang would cast a spell to change her crazy daughter back to her original appearance. In the center of the Taoist hall, Taoist Zhang made a gesture with one hand and held the evil-warding wooden sword in the other. He closed his eyes and prayed to the passing deities. The 9 Taoist masters around him were guarding the array, and yellow talismans were flying in their hands. In order to prevent Qi Juanyu's madness from acting up and disrupting the process of casting the spell, Lord Qi had to order people to feed her drugs. At this time, Qi Juanyu was lying quietly on the altar covered with cinnabar runes, waiting for the Taoist masters to cast the spell to summon her soul. In the sky, Taoist Zhang pinched his fingers and calculated. He suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "The stars on Taishang are ever-changing, exorcising evil spirits, protecting one's life and protecting one's body. Wisdom is clear, mind is peaceful. The 3 souls are eternal. The soul is without loss. The gods bless. The soul returns to its place. The auspicious time has arrived. Please sprinkle the holy water, concubine Qi." Concubine Qi stepped forward and took the golden bottle from Taoist Zhang. Then, she turned and walked to Qi Juanyu and sprinkled the holy water on her body. Madame Qi held Lord Qi's sleeve tightly and looked here. Her eyes were nervous and expectant. She was afraid that if this ritual was ineffective, their only daughter would have no hope in this life. Mother Hui and the others were also nervous. The whole place was silent. Only the sound of the teachers chanting and the sound of the holy water sprinkling from the bottle could be heard. Under countless expectant eyes, Qi Juanyu, who had been sleeping, suddenly opened her eyes. She called out softly to Concubine Qi, who was sprinkling the holy water on her. "Aunt." Tears fell from Madame Qi's eyes. She stepped forward and said, "Juanyu, my daughter, are you awake?" Qi Juanyu slowly got up and turned her head stiffly to look at her. Suddenly, her face showed an extremely painful expression. "Mother, my body is so hot." Then, in front of everyone, Qi Juanyu, who was splashed with holy water, suddenly emitted a cluster of sparks and screamed loudly, "Ah, ah, ah, ah." The scene was extremely strange. No one knew where the cluster of sparks came from, but they saw it burn into a ball of flame in an instant. This unforeseen event happened too quickly. Qi Fei was so shocked that she fell to the ground, completely losing her bearing. Jing Zhong and the others hurriedly helped her up and hid to the side. Mother Hui shouted in shock, "Miss!" He wanted to rush over and slap away the flames around Qi Jueyu, but the flames burned more fiercely. In an instant, they converged into a raging fire and swallowed Qi Jueyu whole. Amidst the raging fire, Qi Juanyu screamed and fell from the ritual platform to the ground. Her shrill scream was like coming to hell. Madame Qi cried and wanted to rush over to save her daughter, but she was held back by Lord Qi. Lord Qi's eyes were bloodshot. He turned his head and shouted, "Sand and stone. Water. Quick." But it was too slow. In the end, it was too slow. When Ningxu arrived, she saw this scene. Crazy, dying an unnatural death. In the end, these 8 characters were confirmed by Qi Juanyu. When buckets of water completely extinguished the fire on her body, she had already been burned into black charcoal. Lord Qi walked over shakily and tried to wake up his only precious daughter, but when he stretched out his fingers, he could no longer feel Qi Dianyu's breathing. Lord Qi raised his hand and looked blankly at the sky. Then he looked at his sister, who was frightened out of her wits not far away. Finally, he punched the ground heavily and tears fell at the same time. Madame Qi had already fainted from crying. Qi Fei was in a trance and almost went crazy. She could only silently say, "How could this be? How could this be? Have you heard? Have you heard?" Consort Qi burned her own niece to death with her own hands. Chapter 202. For a moment, the streets and alleys of the capital were all talking about the same strange incident. What? Could it be that she's also crazy? Why would she burn her own niece to death? Who knows? Strange things happen every year, especially this year. Perhaps it's because the Qi family's 4th miss has already gone mad, and is no longer of any use. Fortunately, they killed her to prevent her from ruining the Qi family's reputation. Even if that's the case, they should have quietly dealt with her. How could they do this in public in front of so many people? Even the honorable imperial concubine, Qi wouldn't dare to commit such a heinous crime. Moreover, the Taoist temple's holy water actually burned a living person to death. In my opinion, there's only one explanation for such a bizarre incident: heaven's punishment. The Qi family must have done something so evil that even heaven couldn't stand it anymore and sent down heaven's punishment as a punishment. The curses of the 8 characters that had been spreading throughout the capital, and the curses of those who had died unnatural deaths had all been placed on her body. This is the best proof. Oh, if that's really the case, then how evil must it be to make heaven so angry? Haha, I'm afraid that only the Qi family knows in their hearts. Do you still remember? 9 years ago, the 7-year-old Qi family's 4th miss killed a wolf demon on the street, and dragged the wolf demon's corpse for 3 whole streets. To do such a thing at such a young age, how could she not have done many evil things over the years? As for Consort Qi, which concubine who has climbed to such a position in the imperial harem is easy to deal with. No matter what, Consort Qi burned the Qi family's 4th miss to death in front of so many people. This is an indisputable fact. Let's just wait and watch the show. For ordinary people, this strange incident was just another topic to talk about after a meal. The officials of the Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice all stood at the scene of the crime, withstanding His Majesty's anger, and almost pulling out all the hair on their foreheads. From beginning to end, this case was so strange that it made people scratch their heads. They did not expect that the strangest thing was yet to come. Looking at the pitch-black corpse of the fourth miss of the Chi family, the officials only felt that their official careers would be ruined today. Your Majesty, Concubine Chi raised her head and 2 streams of tears fell. The heavens had given her an extremely beautiful appearance. Even though she was almost 40 years old, she was still as gorgeous as a blooming flower, dazzling and ostentatious. At this moment, this dazzling flower was leaning against the palace maid's chest, trembling all over. Her face was deathly pale, as if she had been ruthlessly ravaged by a torrential storm. She actually showed a rare, fragile and pitiful side. When she saw the emperor's bright yellow dragon robe appear in front of her eyes, she immediately grabbed onto it tightly like a drowning person seeing a piece of driftwood. She broke down and wailed. It wasn't me who harmed you, or it wasn't. Your Majesty, please believe me. Please believe me. It really wasn't me who harmed her. She had a dazed expression as if she'd just witnessed her own niece being burned alive before her eyes, and it terrified her to the point her mind was in chaos. The emperor looked at this woman who had accompanied him for nearly 20 years, and had almost melted most of his life into her life. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pity in his heart. The emperor patted her hand comfortingly, and ordered the palace maids to immediately bring her into a quiet room to take good care of her. Who can explain clearly to me what exactly is going on? The emperor slowly turned around and looked around at all the officials present. His deliberately lowered voice was enough to show how angry he was at this moment. It's best if no one talks to me about cursing the heavens or ghosts or gods. Otherwise, I'll execute their entire family right now. No one present dared to make a sound. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice was helplessly pushed forward to bear the emperor's rage. Just now, we found a half-burned Taoist robe in the stove of Xianqing Temple. We suspect that someone disguised themselves as a Taoist priest to infiltrate Xianqing Temple, and took the opportunity to tamper with the ritual. We beg your Majesty to give us some time. We will definitely investigate this case. Before he finished speaking, the emperor had already laughed. Every inch of his trembling flesh moved with his angry laughter. "I'll give you time? Could it be that I haven't given you enough time? If I give you more time, I'm afraid that the people's saliva would have already drowned the entire palace." The emperor's gaze swept around. "Where is the daughter of the Ning family?" In the crowd, Ning Shu sighed in her heart. She had no choice but to step forward and bow. "This official's daughter, Ning Shu, greets your Majesty." The emperor put on a fake smile and said, "I remember that Imperial Concubine Chi has already given this case to you. In the previous case, your mouth was very sharp. How come you're not saying anything now? Have you become mute?" Ning Shu lowered her head and didn't reply. The emperor flew into a rage. "From the matter of the curse to today's case, my patience has already run out. Since none of you can find anything, then I'll take care of it. Since today's matter happened in Xianqing Temple, it can't be separated from Xianqing Temple. There are nearly 100 people in the temple, but they couldn't guard against a murderer. All of them are guilty of negligence. In addition, the 37 people from the Imperial Astronomer's office who took over the curse, the 8 eunuchs by Imperial Concubine Chi's side, and the 6 maidservants who were outside the palace on the night of the incident in Wenfang Hall. Arrest all of them and interrogate them. I don't believe that I can't find a murderer." With the emperor's order, hundreds of guards immediately filed in. For a moment, the entire Xianqing Temple had countless people kowtowing and begging for mercy. They cried and cried. It was like a prison. The scene that she didn't want to see the most finally happened in front of her eyes. Ning Shu had no other choice. She could only step forward and say in a clear voice, "Reporting to your Majesty, this official's daughter already has an idea of who the murderer is. I ask your Majesty to allow this official's daughter to go forward and examine the body of 4th young Miss Chi to confirm my thoughts." Chapter 203. The emperor's eyes drooped as he tried to suppress the anger in his heart. Then he coldly said, "I'll give you 3 incense sticks of time. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer after 3 incense sticks of time, I'll punish you as well." Ningxu bowed and said, "This little girl obeys." After temporarily dealing with the emperor, Ningxu turned around and walked towards the crying Qi family. Madame Qi had already fainted from crying. Qi Darren was nearly 50 years old, and had lost a son and a daughter in succession. At this moment, he was extremely sad and his eyes were filled with tears. His chest was filled with anger, and he wanted to vent it on everyone present. He wanted them all to be buried with his precious daughter. However, he blankly looked around and found that other than his own sister, the concubine Qi, who had always been the pride of the Qi family, but had used a cup of holy water to burn his youngest daughter to death, there was no one else he could blame. This huge anger and confusion made his blood boil. His throat was hoarse and he couldn't say a single word. He vaguely remembered that not long ago, that delicate and tender little baby was sent out of the delivery room. That soft little bundle wrapped in swaddling clothes was sent to him. He had several sons before, and had always strictly adhered to the Qi family's ancestral teachings. This caused them to respect and fear him, but they didn't get close to him. Only this little girl, who had been crying when the midwife brought her to him, smiled as soon as she saw him. From then on, he held her in the palm of his hand, afraid she would fall. He held her in his mouth, afraid she would melt. He couldn't wait to send the best things in the world to her. Therefore, even though he clearly knew that her temperament was a bit too spoiled and domineering, he still couldn't bear to discipline her. He only thought that with him and the Qi family's plaque, nothing big would happen. But who knew that in the end his baby would still die? She would die in the hands of his own family. Qi Darren's eyes darkened and his legs staggered. He almost fell down and was supported by the servants. In his dry throat, the only sound he could make was the sound of weeping. Because her death was too tragic. In order to preserve the last trace of dignity, Qi Darren ordered Mother Hui to quickly find a white cloth to cover her. When Ningxu pushed her way through the crowd to examine the corpse, Lord Qi said in a hoarse voice, "Do you really have a conjecture in your heart, or are you just beating around the bush? If it's the latter, don't touch my daughter." Right now, the Qi family was in a dilemma. His daughter, Yining, had died a tragic death before she was married. If her body was dissected in public, he wouldn't even be able to keep his face after death. How would he be able to see his daughter in the Yellow Springs in the future? It would be fine if the culprit was found, but if there was no result in the end, then the blame would be pushed onto concubine Qi. This would be a fatal blow to the Qi family that had already been deeply cut twice. "Lord Qi, don't worry. My daughter wouldn't dare to commit the crime of deceiving the monarch. In a moment, this humble girl will ask the surrounding people to avoid arousing suspicion, leaving only a few female servants as assistants to roughly examine the surface of 4th young Miss body. We will definitely not disgrace 4th young Mississippi." Lord Qi opened his mouth silently, but in the end he turned his face away. "Then go ahead and investigate. If you find out who harmed my Yu-er and my Qi family in the end, I will definitely crush that person. Corpse. 10,000. Duan." Ningxu gave a few simple instructions, and a few maidservants immediately went to find a few wide cloths to surround the corpse, separating it from the view of others. Then she led Forsythia in. It had to be said that Qi Juanyu had really died a tragic death. As soon as the white cloth was lifted, Forsythia subconsciously turned her face away. After being burned by the raging fire, the clothes on her body had almost been burned to ashes, leaving only a few tattered pieces stuck to the corpse. Her skin and flesh had long been burned and stuck together into a piece of charcoal, emitting a suffocating smell. Looking at the horrifying scene in front of her, Ningxu let out a soft sigh in her heart. Not long ago, in Weiyang Palace, Qi Juanyu's appearance when she found out that she had been selected seemed to still be in front of Ningxu. At that time, a crimson blush immediately dyed her cheeks, her fingers entangled, and she was so excited that she almost shed tears. She used the most expectant eyes in the world to look at her sweetheart walking towards her from behind the screen. She did not have her usual arrogance, nor did she have her usual arrogance and cruelty. What was left was only a young and infatuated girl, wholeheartedly infatuated with her sweetheart. In just a few short days, she had become like this. Was this really God's punishment? Perhaps in a sense, it was the cycle of the heavens, and retribution was not good. Back then, she had planted the poisonous seed with her own hands, and in the end, it bore the evil fruit, and it was on her own body. Chapter 204. Ningxu didn't have time to sigh. She put on the pig foam gloves that Huema gave her, and quickly checked her body. She knelt down on one knee and sniffed her body carefully. When she smelled another complex and pungent smell hidden in the burnt smell of the corpse, she frowned slightly. Then she carefully pinched a piece of the burnt clothes on her body, and crushed it in her palm. She pondered for a moment, and then ordered for Scythia to give her a knife. She cut a small piece of charcoal from Qi Jueyu's body, and put it in the copper plate. Then, she held the murder weapon in her hand, which was the golden cup with the holy water. She carefully looked at it, rubbed the water droplets on it, and sniffed the smell. Finally, she observed every corner and every detail of the Taoist hall. After doing all this, the third incense stick was almost burned to the end. When Ningxu stood up, she was already sweating. She didn't have time to wipe her sweat. She turned around and looked at one of the maidservants of the Qi family who was huddling and crying in the corner. She said softly, "Mother Hui, you have completed the perfect revenge. Please tell us the truth." Hearing this, everyone present was stunned. They were silent for a moment, and then there was an uproar. Even Lord Qi, who had been angry all this time, was stunned. He opened his eyes in disbelief. How could it be her? This woman was born in the palace, and was a famous etiquette instructor in the capital. She was invited by him to teach Qi Jueyu many years ago. She had always done her best to take care of Qi Jueyu. Even Madame Qi, who was Qi Jueyu's biological mother, was not as thoughtful as her. Not to mention how dedicated she was in the past. After Qi Jueyu's accident, she blamed herself every day and followed the servants to look for Qi Jueyu in the capital. After Qi Jueyu went crazy, the other servants were afraid of being bitten by Qi Jueyu, so they all avoided her. Only she stayed by her side, and took care of her day and night. Until just now, she was still kneeling beside Qi Jueyu's body and crying. She beat her chest in grief and said that she wanted to follow Qi Jueyu. When the officials of the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court came in, who didn't sigh at her loyalty? How could it be her? However, this Lady Ning's clear eyes fell on her as she asked her a question. Everyone followed her line of sight, and saw that beside Qi Juanyu's corpse, Mother Hui was kneeling with the other servants. She slowly raised her head and looked at Ningxu with tears and confusion. She said slowly, "Lady Ning, what do you mean by that? How come? I don't understand at all." Ningxu shook her head gently. "You've been leading this series of cases from the beginning to the end, haven't you?" Before Mother Hui could speak, the maidservant beside her had already questioned, "How is this possible?" Just now, when Miss was on fire, Mother Hui was the first to rush forward to put out the fire regardless of the danger. Now the blisters on her hands are still there. How can you say that Mother Hui is Mrs. Murderer? Someone beside her immediately agreed and complained for her. That's right, that's right. Moreover, since the masters rushed to the training hall this morning, Mother Hui hasn't left Mrs.'s side, and has been serving Mississippi. She hasn't touched any holy water or golden zune. How could it be her? Lady Ning, you can't just find someone to take the blame for the case. No matter how cheap our servants' lives are, they're still lives. Even Lord Qi, after bowing his head and thinking slowly, said hoarsely, "When we arrived at Xianqing Temple this morning, in order to prevent you from falling ill, I ordered Mother Hui to serve you closely and not leave her side. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have had the chance to do anything in this case." Ningxu's words were firm. "No, she did something. It's just that she's not the only one." "What do you mean?" "Because since that mysterious and treacherous blood signature, or even earlier than the wolf demon's revenge, besides her, there was a group of people who conspired with her to do all this." Chapter 205. A group of people? His Majesty looked at Mother Hui, who was kneeling on the ground like a frightened quail. It was hard for him to imagine that such a huge mystery would be solved by such a woman. Was it not a joke? Ningxu met His Majesty's suspicious gaze, neither servile nor overbearing. She straightened her back like a lotus flower, showing her certainty and confidence. Your Majesty, the inside story of this case is extremely complicated. Every link is intertwined, and it is difficult to pick out one by one to explain clearly. Your Majesty, please allow me to start from a few days ago when the imperial astronomer divined the cursed lot, and report to you one by one. The emperor reluctantly squeezed out some patience and said, "Okay, tell me everything from the beginning to the end." After Ningxu bowed in greeting, she raised her head. The golden crow above her head had been covered by a dark cloud at some point in time. The surroundings darkened, but her eyes were abnormally bright, like two balls of black mercury immersed in water. She could easily see through the chaotic fog. As everyone knows, a few days ago at the peace banquet in Weiyang Palace, hosted by the Empress, concubine Qi and several old concubines, the Crown Prince of Nanping Prince drew lots to choose his concubine. In the end, the fourth young lady of Qi drew the letter written by the Crown Prince of Xiahou, and was chosen as the Crown Princess. At that banquet, the 13th princess got into an argument with the fourth young lady of Qi, because she did not draw the letter. Then there was the incident of her falling into the water by the imperial garden. After that, the fourth young lady of Qi mysteriously disappeared without a trace in the fragrant hall. It was not until a few days later that her trace was found under a bridge where beggars gathered. After Ningxu summarized the matter as briefly as possible, she began to peel off the hidden bud of the lotus petal one by one, and showed it to everyone. Actually, what everyone doesn't know is that the ceremony of drawing lots to choose the consort was not real from the beginning to the end, because at that time, the box that contained the 24 pieces of paper was all empty. The only piece of paper written by His Highness the Crown Prince had long been put aside in order to fish out the fish that was hidden in the muddy water. As soon as the first petal of the lotus petal was peeled, it caused a heated discussion. So that's it. In that case, the fourth miss of the Qi family is not the rightful princess consort. There were also people who couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. However, because Lord Qi was also present, they didn't dare to say it out loud. They only muttered in their hearts. On the day of the selection, the Qi family was so high profile. They sent cart after cart of rewards to her residence. When the Qi family received the good news, the sound of firecrackers immediately rang out. Who would have thought that from beginning to end, it was just an illusion? Now the mirror is broken and the flower is ruined. This is really absurd. Sigh. The emperor thought of something and suddenly asked, "Why were you there that day?" Ningxu choked for a moment, then awkwardly explained, "His Highness the Crown Prince received the imperial edict and entered the palace. When he learned about the curse, he was worried all night. Perhaps it was because my daughter accidentally solved the case last time, which made His Highness think highly of my daughter, so he privately ordered my daughter to assist from the side." She tried her best to explain, but the other officials present all revealed some kind of obscure and mysterious look. Ningxu was silent. Ever since that absurd banquet at the Chasing Cloud and Chasing Moon restaurant, the two enthusiastic officials from the Ministry of Justice had gone back and exaggerated, spreading the unspeakable things between her and Xiao Yuni, Tan Siwei, and Xiahou Qing like wildfire. In such a large capital, there were more than 10 yamens from 6 provinces and 6 ministries. Every day, they would meet in the morning court. Since they had nothing to do, they had long spread the unspeakable things to 4, 5, 6, or 7. During the previous 2 investigations with the Supreme Court, she had more than once heard the officials quietly gossiping about her, describing how Ningxu's nine-tailed fox divine technique had reached a new level. Now, there was another piece of evidence of her seducing Xiahou Qing. Oh heavens, what the hell is this? She didn't have time to mourn for her damaged reputation. She coughed a few times and quickly pulled the topic back to the main topic. In short, His Highness' method was very effective. As expected, the other party made a move. The 24 noble ladies present each drew a blank letter. Logically speaking, no one was chosen, but something incredible happened. After the letter in 4th Miss Qi's hand was opened, there was actually writing on it. After the incident, We immediately investigated and analyzed that the letter in fourth Miss Chi's hand must have been swapped. At that time, there were 5 people besides her who touched her letter. They were the personal nanny who helped her with the fire paint, the 13th princess who fought with her for the letter, the 2 palace servants who came on behalf of concubine Su to stop her, and old consort Yu who persuaded the 13th princess. At that time, our attention was attracted to the 13th princess who had just quarreled with her, but we ignored the personal nanny who was standing beside her and serving her, whom she regarded as her confidant, Mother Hui. She was the one who had the most opportunity to do something. People were the easiest to be blinded by the light. After the incident, they subconsciously put Mother Hui and Qi Zhuanyu in the same camp. They suspected Xiao Zhangping, Shen Xing, and concubine Su. They even suspected that fourth Miss Qi might be in love with His Highness, so she did it on purpose. However, they didn't take Mother Hui, who was respectful and almost invisible, seriously. Chapter 206. Mother Hui looked at Ning Xu blankly and said, "It's my duty to serve Mississippi. You can't put the blame on me just because I was there at the time." The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Wang Han, thought for a moment and agreed. There is no conclusive evidence and no witnesses. At best, we can say that she has the suspicion and possibility of committing the crime, but we can't directly convict her. Ning Xu declined to comment and continued. Then came the incident where the 13th princess and the 4th miss of the Qi family fell into the supreme liquid pool together. When the 4th miss of the Qi family was rescued from the pool, everyone suddenly found that her collar had been stuffed with that crazy, and unnatural death curse. Similarly, because 13th princess and 4th Miss Qi were in close contact and fell into the water together, everyone looked at 13th princess suspiciously. Is there any eunuch who participated in the rescue at that time? At that time, the incident was very big. Many eunuchs in the palace were ordered by the empress to participate in the rescue. Hearing Ning Xu's question, a eunuch beside His Majesty quickly raised his hand. "I was there at that time." "Eunuch, please recall carefully. When you rescued 4th Miss Qi from the supreme liquid pool, did you find the curse in her collar?" The eunuch bowed his head and carefully recalled for a long time. Then he shook his head and said, "I don't think so." After Ning Xu nodded her head in thanks, she asked the eunuch to go back. "Yes, after I asked several palace maids and eunuchs who participated in the rescue, the answer I received was exactly the same. No. Your Majesty can go back to the palace and ask all the palace maids who participated in the rescue. A pair of eyes may be negligent, but so many people didn't notice it. It wasn't until 4th Miss Qi was rescued ashore, and the maids wrapped her with a cloak that Grand Tutor Qian's second daughter suddenly found the curse on 4th Miss Qi's collar. Please think about it. If the 13th princess secretly put the token into her collar before she fell into the water, she would struggle when she fell into the water. How could the 13th princess guarantee that the token would not be shaken into the water? Secondly, why didn't the 13th princess find the token when so many eunuchs and palace maids fished her out and touched her closely? Tan Siwei, who was standing behind the Chancellor of the Supreme Court, thought for a moment and said, "So, it's very likely that someone secretly put the signature into 4th Miss collar when the servants were in a hurry to cover her with cloaks. At that time, everyone was in a panic and surrounded 4th Miss, so no one would have noticed the extra pair of hands." Yes. Ning Xu nodded and smiled. At that time, the person who was closest to 4th Miss was also Mother Hui. Mother Hui was frightened and flustered. Every wrinkle on her face was written with grievance. She opened her mouth and was about to defend herself when she was interrupted by Ning Xu. "I know. You want to say that it's just a matter of duty, so let's skip this part and continue." After that, 4th Miss Qi was frightened when she fell into the water. Consort Qi arranged for her to rest in the fragrance hall, which was closest to the imperial garden. That night, the disappearance of 4th Miss Qi shocked all of us. At that time, there were more than 100 guards guarding the perimeter of the fragrance hall. 4th Miss Qi was resting alone in her bedroom. 6 servants, including Mother Hui, were guarding outside the hall. 4th Miss Qi's bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and there were guards guarding the staircase. Logically speaking, even if she had wings, she would not be able to escape the eyes of the many guards. After that, Consort Chi ordered people to search the entire fragrance hall, but they did not find any suspicious secret passages or hidden compartments. Judging from the situation at that time, no one would be able to steal a living person from there, but it happened. So at that time, I was also confused and at a loss. Coupled with the blood print of the wolf's paw on the dress, everyone could not help but associate it with the mischief of a demon. However, are there really demons and ghosts in this world that can stir up trouble? I don't believe it. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Wang Han, revealed a puzzled expression and asked, "Then how do you explain this matter? The night before, old Princess Consort you went to the fragrance hall to visit 4th Miss Chi at midnight, but she disappeared at midnight. During this time, even if Mother Hui had the ability to secretly hide 4th Miss Chi, there was no way to transport her out of the palace." Ningshu nodded. Every day, the key to the imperial harem would be released at midnight, and the palace gates would be opened at midnight the next day. During this time, no one would be able to enter or leave the harem. This is something that everyone knows. Wang Han sneered. Then what else did Lady Ning say? Could it be that this woman has the ability to hide someone for a few hours and then teleport them out of the palace? Moreover, after the incident, these servants were personally escorted out of the palace by the guards. It's possible to hide a few handkerchiefs on them, but to hide a living person? Stop joking. Ningshu smiled, her eyes clear and bright. She gently tilted her head and said, "But who said that 4th Miss Chi must have disappeared after midnight?" Chapter 207. Ningshu calmly raised her guess. After 4th young miss was chosen as the heir's wife, the concubines and grand concubines of the various palaces bestowed 4th young miss with many treasures and silks as congratulatory gifts. They almost piled up into a small mountain. When the sun was setting in the west, I visited 4th young miss as a small eunuch by the heir's side. I personally heard 4th young miss instruct Hui Mama to lead people to pack up a portion of the treasures and transport them back to the residence. After that, 4th young miss went into the hall to rest with Hui Mama's support and never came out again. Perhaps no one noticed that among the treasures, there was a reward from Consort Chi. 2 bolts of silk and satin from Zhongchuan province that were placed in a crimson brocade box. That brocade box was more than 3 feet long and 2 feet deep. It was enough to wrap up a soft and slender young girl and place her inside. Then, without anyone noticing, it would be placed in a carriage with the other items and transported back to the Chi residence. This is simply. Ningshu's guess was too outrageous. After everyone heard it, they couldn't say anything. They could only use their stunned expressions to express their shock. Then what should we do with the 2 extra bolts of silk and satin? Those are 2 bolts of silk and satin that weigh several dozen caddies. You can cut them up and deal with them separately. Once you break them up, the troublesome matter will be easily solved. Ningshu replied briskly, "You can either put the small pieces of silk into each brocade box or tie them to your body. Either way, there are ways to do it." At the time, everyone thought that she had disappeared in the palace, and they only thought in that direction. In their panic and worry, who would have thought that the 4th young lady, whom they were so desperately searching for, was hidden in the pile of gifts that had been shipped back to the Fu? I guess that you had already arranged for people to receive the 4th young miss in the Chi residence. When the brocade box that hid 4th young miss was transported back to the Chi residence, it was secretly transported out using the kitchen's swill cart or night fragrance buckets. Mother Hui, when you were repeatedly searched and questioned, nothing could be found. After you were leisurely released from the palace, everything had already been settled. What you needed to do was to put those pieces of silk back into the brocade box and place them at the bottom of the pile of rewards. After saying that, Ningshu turned around and looked straight into Mrs. Huey's eyes. "I think that's why you were so anxious to burn it when I went to the storeroom on a whim. It's because there's a big secret hidden in it that can expose you immediately. Am I right, Mother Hui?" Mother Hui was dazed for a moment, as if she couldn't understand what Ningshu was talking about. She pursed her lips and slammed her forehead on the ground. This old servant doesn't know why Lady Ning would have such an idea. Now that the brocade box has been burned to ashes, this old servant really can't explain myself. However, I still want to speak up for myself. Your Majesty, this old servant is innocent. What Lady Ning said, this old servant didn't do a single thing. Tan Siwei listened attentively, following Ning Shu's train of thought. However, a new question quickly arose. According to what Lady Ning said, Qi Juoyu was hidden in the brocade box and sent out of the palace before 5:30 p.m. Then after that, her bedroom was empty. How could no one have discovered it? Ning Shu analyzed clearly. There are two possibilities for accomplishing this. The first possibility is that the other 5 maidservants who entered the palace with her conspired together, so no one would expose it. They even made up a lie together when someone came to visit. Then one of them would pretend to be 4th young miss and lie on the bed. In any case, 4th young miss was already asleep. As long as she turned her back, no one would be insensible enough to wake her up, let alone verify whether she was the real one. Xiang Jin, Hui Yu, and the others kneeling beside Mother Hui immediately cried out for injustice. The emperor waved his hand in annoyance and ordered people to temporarily gag their mouths. Then what about the second possibility? And the second possibility? Ning Shu raised her head and looked in the direction of the emperor. In an extremely soft voice she slowly said, "Then it can only be old Princess Yu. How dare you?" The emperor immediately revealed an angry expression. Chapter 208. When everyone present heard Ning Shu mention old Princess Consort Yu, they had a feeling that His Majesty would be furious. As expected, His Majesty's face was tense, as if he would order the palace servants to punish Ning Shu for her audacity at any moment. This was because the late old Prince Yu was His Majesty's most trusted elder brother. Not only did he risk his life to save His Majesty when Zhao Wenzhong was plotting rebellion in Jingzhou, he also made great contributions to His Majesty when His Majesty ascended the throne 25 years ago, helping His Majesty secure the throne. His Majesty had always remembered this kindness in his heart. Now that old Prince Yu had passed away, old Princess Consort Yu was the only one left in Prince Yu's household. His Majesty was very moved and treated old Princess Consort Yu even more favorably as compensation. Even the imperial princess was given to her to raise to relieve boredom. How could he allow a little Ning Shu to offend her? Not to mention putting her in the position of a suspect. This Lady Ning's guts were as big as ever. Did she not know how to write the word death? It really made people admire her. Ning Shu fearlessly met His Majesty's slightly narrowed eyes and bowed. "May Your Majesty please calm down. My daughter's guesses are not baseless and have a reason." Before His Majesty could punish her, she quickly explained the reasons for her suspicions. Generally speaking, unless it's something urgent, most people wouldn't visit others at such a late time like the 9-hour period. Especially when 4th Miss fell into the water in the afternoon. In order to express her concern, old Princess Consort Yu should visit earlier to express her concern. However, she chose to do so at such a time. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, after old Princess Consort Yu visited, the servant said that 4th Miss had already rested, and it was inconvenient for her to meet. However, old Princess Consort Yu still insisted on visiting. After pushing the door open to take a look, she retreated and said that since 4th Miss had already fallen asleep, she would not disturb her for the time being, and would come back tomorrow. Doesn't such an action seem abrupt? Did she really not believe the servant's words? Or did she come just to help Mother Hui clear her suspicions and at the same time, to obscure the true time of 4th Miss's disappearance? Clap, clap, clap. After Ning Shu finished speaking, a few claps suddenly sounded from afar. Accompanying the claps were a few intermittent coughs. Ning Shu looked towards the source of the sound, and found that it was none other than old Princess Consort Yu whom she had just mentioned. The emperor asked, "Imperial sister-in-law, why are you here?" Old Princess Consort Yu sighed softly. This old one was burning incense in the nearby Miaojing Hall, when I suddenly heard the servants say that 4th Miss of the Qi family had been burned to death by Imperial Consort Qi in Xianqing Temple. How could this old one not be worried when such a big thing happened? I thought that your majesty must be very anxious right now, so I came to take a look. Perhaps there is something this old one can help with. After answering the emperor, old Princess Consort Yu turned her gaze and looked at Qi Juanyu's charred body to express her deep regret. Then she said to Lord Qi, "My condolences." Finally, her gaze slowly landed on Ning Shu. After sizing her up slightly, she revealed an expression of admiration. "You are the Ning family's girl, right? This old one remembers that when you were born, the Duke's mansion held a 100-day celebration. This old one even hugged you once. At that time, I saw that your large eyes were very lively, and I told Hashin that when you grew up, you would definitely be intelligent and charming, as clear as jade. I didn't expect it to be true." Her deduction was methodical and indeed worthy of praise. "I just didn't expect that at this old one's age, with half of my body buried in the earth, I would actually have the opportunity to be treated as a suspect. This can be considered as experiencing something new before my death. It is indeed interesting." The emperor had always respected old Princess Consort Yu. At this time, when he heard her say this, he felt that Ning Shu's guess was simply absurd. He coldly said, "Daughter of the Ning family, how can old Princess Consort Yu be slandered by you? Quickly kneel down and beg for forgiveness." Just as the emperor was about to punish her, he didn't expect that the one to smooth things over was old Princess Consort Yu. "Your Majesty, there is no need to be angry." Ning Yatu only said that there was such a possibility and didn't say that it was definitely this old one's doing. "Why don't we listen to this child first? This old one is also very curious about the truth behind this mysterious case." Old Princess Yu smiled amiably and looked at Ning Shu with a very tolerant gaze. "Regarding your two questions, this old one can answer them all. First, this old one didn't visit the Qi family's fourth young miss in time, because Chongping Yatu had also fallen into the water that day and was frightened and suspected. There was an endless stream of people who came to visit the Qi family's fourth young miss, but no one went to see Chongping. This old one had taught her for 6 years after all, and had a deeper relationship with her. I couldn't bear to see her like this, and went to accompany her first. It wasn't until she fell asleep that I had the time to visit the Qi family's fourth young Mississippi. I ask for your Majesty and official Qi's understanding on this point." As for the second point, the Qi family's fourth young miss falling into the water was more or less related to Chongping. This old one was worried that if this misunderstanding wasn't explained clearly in time, it would really become a misunderstanding. Thus, in a moment of desperation, this old one didn't care too much. Moreover, this old one thought that the Qi family's fourth young miss was unhappy and refused to see this old one. Thus, this old one insisted on entering the hall. After entering, this old one realized that the servants weren't lying to this old one, and that the Qi family's fourth young miss had already fallen asleep. Thus this old one retreated. At that time, this old one did indeed see the shape of the quilt bulge, and had the same long hair as the Qi family's fourth young miss, so this old one didn't think too much about it. I don't know if Ning Yatu is willing to believe this explanation. Chapter 209. Everything had a motive. Old Princess Yu colluded with the servants of the Qi family to kill Qi Juanyu, who had nothing to do with her. Even a novel wouldn't write such a ridiculous story. After hearing old Princess Yu's explanation, the people who weren't convinced by Ning Shu's second conjecture felt that it was even more ridiculous. Wang Han and the others looked at His Majesty's expression and immediately said, "Old Princess Yu has always been devoted to Buddhism, and has no enmity with the fourth young mistress of the Qi family. Why would she participate in this case? It must be the work of these 6 servants. This official agrees. This official agrees." 7 or 8 officials stepped out to vouch for old Princess Yu. The smile on His Majesty's face finally faded a little. Kai Yu Xiangjin and the others, who were kneeling in the corner with their mouths gagged, had no color on their faces. They shook their heads with all their might and cried. Ning Shu glanced at them lightly, a trace of pity appearing in her heart. Was it Hui Mama and the 5 servant girls who conspired together? Or was it old Princess Consort Yu who was covering up for her? My daughter has been pacing back and forth between these 2 possibilities, unable to make a decision. especially after hearing that the fourth young mistress had more or less scolded and punished these servants. It's hard to guarantee that these servants won't hold a grudge and wait for an opportunity to take revenge. Following Ningshu's words, Xiangjin and the others trembled. Every bone in their body seemed to have been broken, and they collapsed to the ground. Their teary eyes were filled with despair. Wang Han snorted and pointed at Mother Hui. He said loudly, "Then this case is clear. Send these servants to prison and torture them. I believe that we will be able to find out the truth soon. Especially this stubborn Mother Hui. She must be the mastermind." Everyone's gaze followed Wang Han's finger and looked at Mother Hui, who had been kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. Unknowingly, the dark clouds above them had gathered and the sky was getting darker. She slowly raised her head, and the ravines that had been eroded by time seemed even darker under the gloomy sky. "Lady Ning, up until now, everything is just your conjecture. There isn't a single piece of evidence. Lady Ning, are you going to use your glib tongue to frame this old servant? Even if I die, I won't be convinced." Everyone looked at each other. That's right. If there was no conclusive evidence, no matter how wonderful the deduction was, it would still be a deduction. It wouldn't count, and it wouldn't be able to convince the people of the world. On the contrary, the commoners became suspicious and casually pulled a few scapegoats to cover up the truth of concubine Qi's murder. This old woman looked thin and weak, but her words were unexpectedly sharp. Tan Siwei frowned and looked at Ningshu worriedly. Ningshu said, "Actually, there is evidence. It's just that fourth young Miss, Lord Qi, and Madam Qi all trust you too much and gave the evidence the perfect cover." Mother Hui sneered, "I'd like to hear the details. For example, after fourth Miss went missing, Madam Qi gave out porridge for several days in a row, praying that the gods in the past would be moved to appear and send fourth Miss back. The one who first thought of that idea wasn't Madam Qi, but you, Mother Hui, right? That's why you still couldn't find her and sent someone to deliver the porridge to the bridge, only to find out that fourth Miss had been thrown into a pile of beggars." Mother Hui sneered and shook her head with a firm expression. "This old servant just suddenly remembered a story that I've heard before. A rich family lost a child and washed their face with tears all day long. They kowtowed to the Bodhisattva and begged for forgiveness. The Bodhisattva pitied them and told them in their dreams that if they were truly sincere, then they should do 100 good deeds. If they persevered and truly moved the heavens, then the heavens would fulfill their wishes. When fourth Miss went missing, Madam almost cried herself to death. Everyone in the residence went out and couldn't find her. This old servant had no choice but to tell Madam this story. In the end, the one who made the decision was Madam, not this old servant. Lady Ning, how can you suspect this old servant just because this old servant told a story?" Chapter 210. Mother Hui is indeed worthy of being an etiquette instructor from the palace. You're so eloquent. Ningshu nodded and sighed in admiration. Her lips curved slightly. Ever since fourth young Miss was found, I noticed a very strange thing. As long as fourth young Miss was awake, she would shout that she wanted to escape. She also kept begging not to skin me. Logically speaking, the Qi residence is her home. With her parents and brothers in the residence, it should be the place that gives her the greatest sense of security in the world. Mother Hui, please explain to me why she would have such a reaction." Mother Hui lowered her eyes and sighed. Perhaps during the time she was missing, Miss suffered a great shock and couldn't recognize anyone. She couldn't even tell that she had returned home. Ningshu pressed on. "Then how do you explain why it was useless for Lord Qi and Mistress Qi to coax her? She would only calm down for a moment when she saw you, Mother Hui? Perhaps it's because this old servant has taken care of Miss for so many years. So Miss trusts this old servant a lot." Ningshu smiled. "Ah, she can't recognize her parents, but she trusts you a lot. Such a deep master-servant relationship is really touching." Mother Hui's eyelids suddenly twitched, and her expression changed visibly. However, she still gritted her teeth and refused to admit defeat so easily. "Then, according to Lady Ning, what is the reason?" "The truth is that it's not trust, but fear. It's so great that when she smells your scent and hears your voice, she will feel deep fear and despair. That fear causes her to instinctively want to escape as soon as she leaves your sight. It also causes her to immediately curl up and not dare to move when you arrive. She's as obedient as a sparrow in a cage. Ning Shu quickly asked, Lord Qi, perhaps you still have a deep memory of what happened yesterday? Lord Qi was still in a state of extreme shock and nodded stiffly. Yesterday Yuer was agitated and stole a servant's scissors and everything that had happened in the past few days was like a knife that cut into this father's heart. This knife was followed by another knife. Until now he was in so much pain that his entire body was numb. He took a deep breath and finally found some strength to continue his story. After that, she drew wolf paw prints on the wall with her own blood. After that, more than a dozen servants worked together to stop her. At the end of his speech, he raised his hand to cover his face and sobbed silently. Then Lord Qi must still remember that after Fourth Miss painted the entire wall yesterday, she turned around and said something to us. She said, Look, I drew it. Don't they look alike? Lord Qi nodded. Then, does Lord Qi still remember the subtle movement she made when she said those words? When she said that, she looked ingratiatingly in a certain direction. Following Ning Shu's reminder, the incident that happened yesterday once again returned to Lord Qi's mind, causing his mind to constantly replay every minute detail that he had seen at that time. He didn't find it the first time, so he carefully recalled it the second time and the third time. At that time, she seemed to have looked in the direction of my wife. No. She wasn't looking at my wife, but Mother Hui, who was standing diagonally behind my wife. Lord Qi suddenly turned around. His pair of red eyes opened wide as he stared fixedly at Mother Hui. It was only now that he was finally willing to admit that the loyal servant he had personally chosen for his daughter was actually the main culprit behind his precious daughter's entire tragedy. Chapter 211. Facing such a gaze, old Mistress Hui subconsciously touched something in her sleeves and said sarcastically. At that time, fourth young mistress had already lost her mind. This is something that everyone knows. She inadvertently glanced in my direction. This was just a coincidence. How can you conclude that it was me who did it with just a glance? I've seen other officials looking for conclusive evidence to solve a case. Do you only rely on a few words from me or a random glance from fourth young mistress? That Lady Ning is really a strange person. She was still so stubborn and tried to quibble. Ning Shu gently shook her head and sighed. Mother Hui, you keep asking me if I have conclusive evidence. I can tell you that I do. And that thing should be on you right now. That old red fortune bag. As if God had suddenly stopped everything, Mother Hui's face suddenly froze. The hand that was subconsciously half hidden in her sleeves instantly pressed down on something in her sleeves, as if she was pressing down on her own life. I have to admit that everything you did before was too flawless. You acted so vividly that I couldn't put the word murderer on you. So I couldn't understand the process of the crime until I accidentally found the fortune bag you dropped. Ning Shu looked at her deeply. At that time, your reaction was very fast. You said that the fortune bag belonged to fourth young mistress when she was young. In order to pray for her to recover her consciousness, you took it out and wore it. So I didn't think too much about it. It was only after the incident that I realized that you were lying. That wasn't fourth young mistress's fortune bag at all. The Qi family was a big family, and as the apple of the Qi family's eye, the fourth young mistress should have received the best since she was young. Even a random orchid planted in the fourth young mistress courtyard was a very precious species, not to mention the things she used personally. And the fortune bag you dropped was made of the most common red cotton cloth. You wanted to cover up your lie in a moment of desperation. But you didn't know that it was your only flaw. It was because of this small flaw that I locked onto you as a suspect. Mother Hui was at a loss for words. She opened her mouth, wanting to defend herself, but she couldn't say anything for a long time. She knew that she was at the end of her tether. The case was settled. She loosened her sleeves, and the red cotton bag that she had been hiding in her sleeves finally slipped out and landed in front of everyone. Great anger rushed to Lord Qi's head, making him dizzy. He rushed to Mother Hui with bloodshot eyes. If it wasn't for the Imperial Guard stopping him, Lord Qi would have already pulled out a sword and stabbed Mother Hui. Why? Mother Hui, how did the Qi family treat you unfairly? You want to take revenge on us like this? Why? Ever since I invited you to the estate to teach you, or 8 years ago, I've always given you the best treatment, the greatest trust and the greatest respect in the estate. You or has even treated you like a wet nurse. Why? Why? Exactly why? A father's roar, filled with heart-wrenching grief, infected everyone present. For a moment, the entire place was silent, and not a single sound could be heard. Under the cover of the dark clouds and Lord Qi's blood-red eyes, Mother Hui lowered her head and picked up the lucky bag that had fallen to the ground. She didn't care that it was old and faded. Instead, she carefully brushed away every single speck of dust on it and put it to her chest. She said in an extremely soft voice, as if she was coaxing a baby to sleep, "Yes, why? I also want to know." After she finished speaking, she suddenly raised her head and met Lord Qi's gaze with the same hatred. Every word was filled with resentment and hatred. "I also want to know why you and your wife gave birth to such a demonic daughter, who killed the most important person in my life." Chapter 212. Both of them were over 50 years old. Their once flat faces were now filled with wrinkles, and their black hair was gradually dyed with silver. They were like two beasts that were gradually losing their strength and walking toward old age. However, at this moment, these two old beasts, because of their strong hatred, faced each other again. It was as if they were ready to start a fight at any moment to vent their anger. The direction of the matter was too shocking. For a moment, all the bystanders were confused. Even the emperor paused, his eyes full of confusion. When I discovered the abnormality of the fortune bag, I was also very confused. As everyone knows, Hui Mama has been single ever since she left the palace. She has never married, much less had a child. Hui Mama's family is also very small. When she left the palace, she was already 30 years old. Her only sister had married far away, and she could not see her children. Logically speaking, there was no need for a fortune bag. So, why did she have such a fortune bag that belonged to a young child? She also carried it with her and treasured it very much. Ning Shu's story was very interesting. Even Feng Zheng, the minister of the Supreme Court, who had always been ill and did not interrupt anything, couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "Yes, this is too strange." Noticing that His Majesty's eyes had drifted towards him, the old man immediately coughed a few times, leaned against the pillar next to him uncomfortably, and clutched his chest as he cried out in pain. At first, my daughter had the same idea as official Feng. The acting was truly spectacular. Ning Shu looked in his direction, smiled lightly, and then said seriously, "Before solving this mystery, Your Majesty, please listen to my daughter talk about another case. A few days ago, a man named Feng San died in Inma Alley in the north of the city. To the side, the entire Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court had been stolen by this little girl." Wang Han, who was very unhappy in his heart, crossed his arms in front of him and huffed coldly. "The case hasn't been solved yet. Why are you talking about those unrelated people? The emperor is very busy every day. He doesn't want to waste time with you." Tan Siwei tried to smooth things over by saying, "Lord Wang, please calm down. This humble subject was fortunate enough to be involved in Feng San's death. There is a great connection between this humble subject and the disappearance of the 4th Mississippi. This humble subject discovered it when I accompanied Lady Ning to investigate the hiding place of the Qi family's 4th young Mississippi. By the time we arrived at the door and pushed it open, we discovered that the person was already dead in the courtyard of her home. Not a single inch of her skin was left, and wolf pelts were sewn onto her body. And his skin." Tan Siwei still felt nauseous when he thought of the scene where Ning Shu and Huema cut open Feng San's stomach and fished out a pile of things. It was hard to describe the situation at that time. "I believe Lady Ning will give Your Majesty a satisfactory explanation later." Ning Shu nodded at Tan Siwei to express her gratitude. She then continued, "The reason why my daughter mentioned Feng San is because it was this person who caused all the tragedies that followed. He was also the main culprit behind the thousands of families in the capital. On the surface, he was a fur trader and horse dealer, but in reality, he was a trafficker who specialized in kidnapping and selling young children. Lord Tan found a book in his home, which recorded in detail the evil deeds he had committed during those years. Starting from the 7th day of the 9th lunar month in the 15th year of natural selection, he successively abducted hundreds of young children and sold them out of the city to other places. It wasn't until the 3rd month of the 16th year of natural selection that His Majesty strengthened the guards at the city gates, which made him unable to continue his business. An official who had worked in the Ministry of Revenue immediately said, "This humble subject has some recollection of that time. During those 2 years there were many reports of missing children in the capital, so this humble subject reported it to His Majesty." His Majesty was wise enough to notice that something was amiss. He made a prompt decision to double the number of guards at the city gates and set a rule that Yang Qingwei would patrol the city 4 times a day. Only then did the number of people reporting the missing children gradually decrease. Unfortunately, the missing children still couldn't be found. Because he thought of another tragic method. The words that represented the most evil recorded in the book came back to Ningxu again, causing her to close her eyes. Make leakin. When she heard those 2 words, Mrs. Huey's heart violently twitched, as if the most painful piece of flesh in her heart had been forcibly gouged out by someone. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. Chapter 213. The so-called lycanthropes are made of children under the age of 10. Boiling water is poured over their skin, and the skin is peeled off bit by bit from the nape of their neck. Then, fresh wolf skin is immediately pasted on their bloody skin and wrapped in cloth, allowing them to grow together. At most, only 1 out of 10 will survive, and the only one that survives will have their tongue cut out and receive a long period of whipping and scolding. In the end, they will become livestock for others to order around and enslave, and will be pulled into a circus to perform. Ningxu lowered her eyes and tried to speak in the most concise and calm manner possible. However, the people present, if they didn't already have children, then they had younger siblings or nephews at home. When they heard this, their hearts tightened. As long as they imagined their children falling into the hands of such a demon, they felt their entire body turn cold and their tears dry up. Old Princess Consort stood by the Emperor's side. She couldn't bear to look away and let out a sympathetic sigh. The official from the Ministry of Revenue said, "Then what about the dead ones? How did he get rid of so many children's corpses without anyone noticing? Why didn't anyone notice anything strange and report it to the authorities? There are butchers everywhere in Inma Alley, slaughtering pigs and sheep. The entire alley is filled with the smell of blood, and the old blood stains on the ground are the best camouflage for him." In the 19th year of Heaven's selection, after his accomplice, group leader Sun, died, he stopped out of fear and cleaned up all the evidence, leaving only that thin handbook. Thus, I am unable to make an accurate judgment as to how he dealt with it. However, after His Highness sent people to investigate, they found that Feng Sen used horse peddling as a smokescreen. Other than selling so-called horses, he would occasionally sell some fresh horse meat. After hearing this, everyone present couldn't help but feel their stomachs churn. However, most of them felt fear and unease. On the steps, the Emperor's expression was extremely ugly. "Hee, this is truly a pleasant surprise for us. I didn't expect that such a tragedy would happen in our imperial city, right under our eyes, and we were completely unaware. My beloved officials, you are all in charge of the Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and some of you are even Yang Chengwei. You are all my right-hand officials. You really have good eyesight." Wang Han and the others immediately kept quiet out of fear. Cold sweat silently soaked their backs. They were speechless. Even if Feng San dies 10,000 times, it won't be enough to appease the hatred in my heart. Pass down my orders. Drag Feng San out of the Meridian Gate and whip his corpse. Chop him up and feed him to the dogs in front of the commoners. As you command. Following Ningxu's train of thought, Tan Siwei quickly came up with a conjecture. Could it be that the little wolf demon from the vaudeville troupe who died tragically 9 years ago was killed by Miss Qi because she mistook it for a real demon, was related to Mother Hui? Yes. Previously, I had always focused my suspicions on Caillou Lu Jin and other people who had lost their children at home, thinking that it was their revenge. It wasn't until yesterday that I inadvertently discovered the flaw in the fortune bag. When I passed by the CIU bureau, I suddenly had an idea, so on a whim, I rummaged through the CIU bureau's file room all night and finally found it. Mother Hui indeed didn't have a biological child, but more than 10 years ago, she had adopted a 3-year-old boy from the CIU bureau. That child's whereabouts had disappeared before you entered the Qi estate. Ning Shu stared at Mother Hui and spoke slowly. Mother Hui, the CIU bureau's scroll has your own handwriting. You can't deny it. You spent 9 years to complete the perfect revenge for your child. Everything that happened in the past is still pardonable, but now you really shouldn't implicate others. Please admit it. Chapter 214. Everyone was curious about the truth, but they didn't expect it to be like this. 9 years ago, the child adopted by Mother Hui was kidnapped by that scum called Feng San and made into a leakin. Unexpectedly, he was lucky enough to escape death from Feng San, but died in the hands of 4th young Miss Qi. In order to avenge her child, Mother Hui planned for 9 whole years, and also died tragically in front of everyone. Could this be what the heavens meant when they said that the heavens were good at reincarnation? In Xianqing Temple, everyone didn't know what to say. The whole place was silent, and even Lord Qi was stunned. The dark clouds above were heavy and had gathered for too long. At this time, it finally began to rain. The guards and eunuchs were stunned for a moment, and immediately found canopies and umbrellas to block the rain for His Majesty and the other officials. Kneeling on the hard soil, a drop of rain fell on Mother Hui's eyelashes and slowly rolled down her old eyelids like a tear. In the sparse rain, Mother Hui tightly grasped the fortune bag in her hand and finally opened her mouth. Her eyes were red and bloodshot, but her voice was calm, as if her soul had already been pulled into the underworld, and only this useless corpse was left in the human world. She spoke with a hoarse voice, pausing after each sentence. I entered the palace at the age of 11. According to the palace rules, I should have been released at the age of 25. Later, the imperial concubine in the palace said that I was efficient and capable, so she ordered me to serve in the palace for a few more years and help her train a few useful palace maids before releasing me. Thus, the imperial concubine said that I had to wait until I was 30 years old. At that time, women in ordinary families already had a group of children, and some were even about to become grandmothers. As for me, I was alone, and my only sister had already married far away. I spent 19 years in the palace. The moment I stepped out of the palace, I didn't even know where to go. Fortunately, the imperial concubine treated me well and gave me a lot of rewards before leaving the palace, so I didn't have to live on the streets. At first, I thought about whether I should find someone to marry. I didn't ask for anything else, just to have a companion for the rest of my life, to be able to talk to me. At my age, I can forget about joining a good family. At most, I will be a widower or a retired soldier. Unfortunately, it was too difficult. The matchmaker mentioned 3 or 4 candidates for me. They were either gamblers, drunkards, or hot-tempered men who beat their wives away. I looked at each other for a while and gradually gave up on the idea. But do you know? Living alone was too lonely. Every day, from morning to night, I would watch the sun rise and set by myself. The houses next to me would be filled with laughter and laughter, while my small courtyard would be completely silent except for the chirping of insects. It was as quiet as a grave in the wilderness. Later on, with the help of others, I began to visit the various noble families to educate their young ladies. At first, I was quite happy doing it, but later on, I looked at those little children who were emitting a milky fragrance, soft and cute, and an uncontrollable desire grew in my heart. I don't want to get married anymore, but I really want to have a child of my own who can chat with me and relieve my boredom. That way, when I'm old, I won't have to worry about where I die. But where can I get a child? Later on, I thought of the CIU bureau. You don't say. There were quite a few children there. Some were abandoned by their parents because they were sick, some were disabled and almost drowned, and some were too poor to raise them. I looked at those little children who were crying piteously for food and thought, if it was my child, I would rather die than let them live on the streets. Even if I had to feed them with my own blood, I would give them a way out. But fortunately, I also want to have a child of my own, one of them. At this point, a blissful smile appeared on Mother Huey's face. It was as if she had traveled through the river of time and returned to the past. With a nervous heart, she slowly and carefully walked towards the one who was fated to be with her. Since then, she was satisfied and thanked the heavens. She didn't ask for anything else. Chapter 215. His parents used to run a tofu shop. When he was still in his mother's womb, his father died of an illness. His biological mother was grieving and became ill after giving birth. She couldn't hold on for 2 years and died with him. When the neighbors found him, he was almost starved to death, so he was sent here. There were so many children in the CIU bureau. They were either crying, fighting, playing, or trying to attract the attention of the mothers in the CIU bureau or asking for food. He was the only one who sat alone in the courtyard and didn't say anything. He lowered his head and looked at the grass sprouts on the ground. The moment I saw him, I knew it was him. So I walked over, took his soft little hand and brought him home. I changed his name to an I didn't have any other wishes. I just wanted him to grow up without illness or disaster and become a healthy ordinary person. I wanted him to do some small business or travel around. I just wanted him to be safe and happy in this life. My little was so sensible that it made my heart ache. When he saw that I was tired from work, he would stand on the stool and tiptoe to pour me tea. When my waist injury recurred on a rainy day, he would take the initiative to massage my back and waist. When he went out, he never said that he wanted to buy snacks or toys. He said that it wasn't easy for his mother to earn money, so he had to be frugal. Although I didn't have enough money to hire the best teacher for him, I had learned some superficial knowledge in the palace, so I taught him word by word. I didn't expect my little to be so hardworking. He immediately learned a word after being taught once. He could memorize a poem after hearing it once. Sometimes I thought, could it be that God wanted me to suffer for half of my life just to wait for this little baby? It wasn't that he found a way to live for me. It was because I had him that I finally had a home. So I poured my heart and soul into him. I taught him all the great principles that the grand tutors taught the princes in the palace. I taught him to be courteous, to be a gentleman. I taught him to be diligent and to not be arrogant. I taught him to be self-reliant and to be kind to others. I spent a whole 5 years raising my little into a well-educated and modest gentleman. Until that day, when I came home from work and opened the door, he was gone. More and more raindrops pattered on her face and body, also drenching the bag in her hand. Deep red marks fell one after another, like drops of blood that had just flowed out. I searched like a madman. I searched street after street, knocked on door after door. I didn't know how many days and nights I searched, but my was gone just like that. I went to the government office to report it, but they told me that with so many children missing every year, it was too difficult to find them. But how can I give up? The Jingji government was unwilling to pay attention to me, so I went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that they were not in charge of me, so I went to the Ministry of Revenue. Later on, those officials avoided me as soon as they saw me. Some people advised me not to look for another one, and to adopt another one from the CIU Bureau. But how could they know that my little was a treasure that God had taken pity on me and bestowed upon me with great difficulty? I looked for her for half a year. Just when I was about to lose all hope, I found her. That day, when I was walking on the street with an portrait, I accidentally saw someone holding a piece of calligraphy. There were 2 auspicious words written on it. When I saw it, my heart trembled. In this world, I can't recognize anyone's calligraphy, but I can recognize this one at a glance. Because I held his soft little hand and personally taught him each stroke. I immediately asked where the calligraphy came from, but that person said that it was written by some wolf demon. With a body full of doubts and incomparable expectations, I went to look for that vaudeville troupe. But I was late, just a few hours late. When I found him, he had already been beaten to death. His little body was stuffed into a cloth bag, and casually thrown on the side of the road. When I opened it, Mother Hui closed her eyes tightly and wailed silently. My little Anur, who was as obedient as a little fairy child, had already turned into a rotten mess. That you're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.